Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Brookline School Committee meeting on September 24th, 2020. Welcome to everybody. We have a full agenda, as we always do. We want to welcome Dimitri and Selm, our new school committee member. So welcome. It's great to have you on board and just ask questions as we go along. And we're delighted to have you. I also want to say that Superintendent Marini is not available tonight. He did have a death in the family, so he is with his family this evening. And so we will cover the topics that we have listed, but he will not be here. So our thoughts are with him and his family on that. I also just wanted to say something about public comment. A couple of people suggested that public comment might be after we deliberate and on the fall update report on the schools. And sometimes we do that, but just to let you know why sometimes that doesn't work. It's very hard for people to know then when the time is for public comment. And so we don't always know how long our conversations are going to go, which means public comment, if we were to do it after our deliberation, could be as late as 10 o'clock, which is very hard for people to hang around for all that time. You start losing audience members. And so we often put it right up front so people know when it's going to go on, when they need to be available. Also, if we have your comments before we deliberate, then we can include those in our deliberation, which is helpful to us. So it's not to say that we always do it, but that we usually do it that way because it seems to work best for the public and then it gives us input. So just people were wondering about that, and that's just part of why we do that. Okay, we'll go to the consent agenda first. We have minutes for September 17th, September 14th, September 10th, September 3rd, and August 31st. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda, at least those first 5 items? Thank you, David. Do we have a second? Thank you, Jennifer. Are there any corrections, additions, concerns about the items, the minutes? Seeing none, then we'll go for a roll call to approve the minutes. Helen?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
Dimitri?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. No, so that's unanimous. Thank you for all that work, Robin. My goodness, we've had a lot of meetings and a lot of lengthy conversations, and thank you for capturing that so well. I really appreciate it. We now have acceptance of FY 2021 grants from the Brookline High School Innovation Fund and the federal CBRF reopening grant. Do I have a motion to accept that? Jennifer? Thank you. A second?
I'll second it.
Any conversation, concerns? Jennifer?
I just wanted to thank the grant. I don't know how we refer to that. The people offering the grants to us. We are so lucky in our district to have groups in our community like the Innovation Fund that is part of this particular piece of business tonight in our community, and we're so grateful to the work that they do with us in our schools. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I ditto those sentiments. So thank you, Jennifer. So seeing no other comments, we'll go to a roll call. Helen?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Dimitri?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. And then the last item under the consent agenda is the high school project. Skanska Guaranteed Maximum Price GMP change order in the amount of $627,224. That's how I'm trying to say that. Do I have a motion for that? Thank you, Susan. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any comments, Susan? You want to say anything about it? No, just,
We have a long night, so I'm happy to catch people up afterwards if they're interested, but it's
okay.
a long night.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll do the roll call. Susan?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Helen?
Yes.
Dimitri?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Okay. We are not going to do the superintendent's report, interim superintendent's report tonight. So we will move on to public comment. As I said, we have, oh, Susan, sorry.
I just wanted to say something briefly. Before we started the cameras, we all had an opportunity to welcome Dimitri to the school committee. So we had our chance to do that, but we didn't do it on camera. So now that we are on camera, welcome, Dimitri. We're so happy to have you. For those about to rock, we salute you. We're so excited that you're here. We don't know why on earth you want to be, but we couldn't imagine someone with a better set of skills at this moment in time. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for the service that you've already given to this town, but that you're going to give to this town in the coming weeks, years, I hope. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be with you. Once again, I thank you for your vote of confidence, and I'm looking forward to spend my evenings every Thursday with you. This is
That's
great.
right. That's how it goes. Thank you, Susan. Okay, so we have quite a few on public comment. We'll ask to keep them to 2.5 to 3 minutes, if you would, please. And we will start with Erica Anderson, and then Carolyn Thal will be up next. So Erica, you are on.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Erica Anderson. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I have 3 daughters who attend the Rough and Ridley School. One is a 6th grader, and my twins are 8 years old and in the 3rd grade. I wanted to speak tonight because I want to request what we as parents signed up for our children to be in school 2 to 3 days a week. In August, we were instructed to sign up our kids for either the remote academy or for hybrid learning. We were told the kids would be in school for 2 to 3 days a week, and my family was elated. Never mind that the hybrid schedule was going to be very chaotic for 2 working parents. We knew how important and how valuable it is for our kids to be in school with their classmates and with their teachers. I happily signed them up for the hybrid option. Brookline is well below the COVID health metrics, as we learned from panel 4 during a presentation before school started, that have been established to permit an in-person return to school. The weather is as good as it's going to get. Yet, since the very first day of school, my 3 girls sit in front of screens for 5 hours a day for now 5 days a week. My 8-year-old daughter should not be spending 5 hours a day on a screen. No kid should be. This is not what we were promised, and Brookline can do better. This is not what we signed up for. We are not even getting the so-called remote plus that we were told. There has not been a single opportunity for our kids to join their class or to meet their teachers, other than being handed a Ziploc bag of materials to accompany their Chromebook. I want to share 2 examples where I thought this was highlighted, especially from the last 2 weeks. On a beautiful sunny day, my 8-year-old daughter set her Chromebook on the top step of our front stairs in front of our house. If we keep them on the steps, it's close enough to the modem that she can get internet connection. She stood at the bottom of the steps and followed along with the movements that her gym teacher was prompting on the screen. She was hopping and skipping and jumping. She was happy, she was having fun, but she was alone. No one has explained to me, or more importantly to my kids, why they have to do PE to a computer screen rather than outdoors at the playground that's a block away from our house. My second example was when my other twin was instructed in a science class to find something at home to observe. They talked about how scientists look at things, and she picked out a houseplant to do a drawing of. And she sat there and did this exquisite drawing, very detailed, of our houseplant, but no one could explain to me, and no one has explained to her, why she couldn't be in a park or outdoors with her class making scientific observations and drawings. My husband is a doctor, and I tell you this because I don't in any way take lightly the pandemic or the situation of COVID that we have been in for the past 6 months. He volunteered twice a week at a COVID clinic last spring, and I hated every single minute that he was there. I understand the health risks, and I never want us to be in a position where he has to again do something like that. But there are other health metrics that we have to balance, that we have to measure in addition to just the rate of COVID-19. Health measures of our kids being in front of screens and away from their peers. There are social and emotional risks that are not being prioritized, particularly at a time when other health metrics in Brookline are being met.
You're at 3 minutes, so if you could please wrap up.
Absolutely, thank you. I will wrap up by where I am at the end of my comments, and I want to wrap up where I started. I'm here simply to ask the committee and the superintendent or whoever is to make these decisions that we need to get what we were told was going to happen. A hybrid model where our kids get away from screens at least a couple of days a week, where they get to see these incredible teachers who have been doing this impossible task for days now. We cannot let the perfect get in the way of the good, and we have the resources, the intelligence, and the creativity in Brookline to make this happen. So please implement the hybrid model immediately so that our kids can return to school. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Carolyn, you're up, and then Laura Basilio.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Hello, and hello, Erica Anderson. That was so well said, and I wish I was as articulate as you are. I'm going to give a similar sentiment. I may not be as articulate as Ms. Anderson. Kudos. So I was hoping that, I'm sorry that Dr. Marini's not there, so I'll just address the school committee. I hope and think that probably, maybe, you are going to tell us later in this meeting that there is now a plan for bringing some kids back to school in a hybrid model. That would be delightful, but it's not enough. It's not good enough because you've already walked back essential promises and our children are at home alone and they didn't have to be. Expert Panel 4 has been jumping up and down and waving their arms for weeks, maybe months, saying now. And you've been bogged down in politics. OLS is ready, and 500 ninth graders who've been waiting for their first day of high school are sitting at home alone. I'll parentheses here, I have a ninth grader. She looks at me and says, Mom, I just want to have a first day of high school. Dozens and dozens of rooms in all of our buildings are ready. We know they are. And first through 8th graders are sitting at home alone, staring at screens. Plus is a bust. A one-off meetup to play the name game is not what anyone thought you meant by regularly scheduled, intentional in-person activities. These are very nice words, but we need action. You started off in August saying the most important thing was to get kids back to school, but you failed to get them back. Last week, Dr. Marini said, school has started. All is right in the world. Well, school has started, but it's not open, and all is not right in the world. Dr. Marini said last week, it feels good to the teachers. The feeling we get from the staff is that people are connected to people again. Wonderful. What about the kids? Parents are tired of excuses and stonewalling, and tired of trying to tell our children why their schools aren't open for them when we all know they could be. You can tell feel-good anecdotes about how hard everybody's working, but this is not a feel-good story. No one here should feel good about where the public schools of Brookline are at. And it's not because of the virus, and it's not because of the buildings. It's because of politics, and we all know it. Right now, you're ignoring science and failing our children every single day, and every single day matters. Now is the time for accountability. Now is the time for you to stand up and draw a line in the sand, get our kids back to school. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Laura, you're up next, and then Sherry Dalsham.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Thank you, school committee members, for your time tonight. I want to speak to you from two perspectives. First, as a parent of a K student and first to return second grader, and second, as a Brookline teacher. With that in mind, I'm going to ask for you to not cut me off. What I wrote is under 2 pages. Please let me finish what I have to say, and please hear what needs to be heard with your whole heart. I am one speaking on behalf of many. As a parent, my K student is loving school. While she maintains social distancing, frequently washes her hands and wears her mask diligently, she is overjoyed to go every day. Her teachers have worked so hard to make their room and activities planned accessible for the 12 students who attend in person, despite being unsure of their own safety in the building. She is receiving what I think we all hoped for our youngest students to get from this experience. And from a parent perspective, our in-person learning is as good as it could possibly be in a pandemic, thanks to our amazing kindergarten teachers. This picture is in stark contrast to my second grader. Every day, it is a struggle to get him out the door in the morning. Every day, he goes to his multi-age classroom, takes out his school-issued Chromebook, wears a mask and headphones, and attempts to log on to his class meeting. Even with 2 full-time paras in the room, the help he receives is minimal. Neither of them are tech experts, and neither of them are providing his special ed support. He is simply not receiving it. His IEP is not being followed. Our special ed programs are so severely understaffed right now, teachers and paras cannot possibly do everything they're being told to do. Brookline is out of compliance. When my son speaks on Zoom, he cannot be heard by his teachers or classmates due to the district issued Chromebooks and the ridiculously terrible internet. His teacher has advocated for him to receive more help accessing her lessons, but she can only do so much from the other side of a computer screen. We had to send our own family computer to school with him to see if that would help. He has PE classes from behind a desk when his PE teacher is in the building on the floor below him. He is one of hundreds of first to return students across the district experiencing the same thing. And I ask you, how is this helping our most vulnerable students? Students who were chosen to be first to return were chosen so, as a district, we were told that you could provide a more equitable access to this virtual education. Yet in reality, these students were provided with unacceptable internet service and broken Chromebooks, while families with the means to provide for their children have adequate internet access and multiple devices to work from, and possibly even tutors or homeschool teachers to support them. Why are none of our first to return students using the hundreds of MacBook Airs that are sitting around our schools collecting dust? Due to poor planning and lack of foresight by district leaders, parents were forced to make decisions with very little information, and our children are paying the price. I asked my son's principal what would happen to the first to return students when their grade level becomes hybrid. Would they be able to still attend 5 days a week, as that is what they needed to be in person every day? I was told, that's a great question. I don't know. I'll get back to you. The time for that's a great question, I don't know, and I will get back to you was June, not September 24th. It occurs to me that my fellow parents and the school committee may not know the extent to which the mismanagement, disorganization, and lack of communication in the district goes. Please allow me to shed some light on that as a teacher. Since school started on the 1st, I have had 1 staff meeting, 1. The list of questions for procedures and safety keeps mounting, and we are not being given answers. On a sick day, I had to cobble together coverage for my class with fellow teachers because there is no plan for when a teacher is sick in the district right now. Service providers such as speech and occupational therapists, literacy specialists, enrichment and challenge specialists, and paraprofessionals are being pulled to essentially babysit first to return students, missing opportunities to service students on their caseload or provide critical interventions to students. Specialists have been pulled to be classroom teachers in grades they've never taught before. They have not been given procedures for supporting these students or how to properly clean when the cohorts inevitably mix. RLA teachers still do not have class lists or schedules. They have no specials. They have no specialists. Classroom teachers were not given cohorts from their home schools, so any hope for safety and predictability is gone. Some schools in the district are forcing all non-classroom teachers to be in person, while other schools are allowing staff to stay home until they're hybrid. Some schools had half days last week, so teachers could meet with students one-on-one, and some had full days. Some schools have specialists providing support as their job description entails, and other schools are now lacking those vital resources. There is no leadership for our poor principals, so they are left to try and make the best plan for their school. Unsupported, how can anyone in this scenario succeed? Where is the equity in this for staff, or more importantly for our students? Brookline's lack of equity is more evident now than ever. The question is, what are we going to do about it? I have to believe you didn't know any of this was happening or how untenable this actually is. What we are doing to our staff and our students is unconscionable. We are going to lose extremely talented teachers and kind, loving families, all because we can't get our act together as a school district. Morale is at an all-time low for families and staff alike. I could go on with many more details and specific examples of the pervasive dysfunction in our schools right now, but there is no time. We need answers to our questions. We need solutions to the problems created by the lack of preparation and planning done by central admin. You know who could have done a better job planning, organizing, and executing a meaningful and effective remote learning plan? A teacher. I would love to see my students sitting in my classroom as soon as humanly possible. So I implore you to get your hands dirty, really understand what is happening in our buildings, and help fix this mess that's been made, because we can't do it without you. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Sherry, you're up next, and then Katie Goldring.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Shari Dalsheim. I've been teaching in Brookline since 1986. I've been here obviously a long time. Educators at Heath School met on Tuesday to reflect on the first week of school and talk about how we could support one another. As we chatted, many issues arose. Some even brought colleagues to tears. We want to share these concerns with you as notes from the field, as you should know what is really going on in our schools. We must be honest and realistic about what we are facing to take necessary steps to make this school year the best it can be for students, educators, and families. 1, staffing shortage. There's a significant staffing shortage impacting safety, equity, and education. You just heard about the equity from the person before me. Students in first to return, the FTR, rooms are not able to have their law-mandated IEP needs met due to lack of staff and multi-grade grouping. Hearing impaired students cannot consistently access the curriculum due to increased background noise in the multi-grade rooms. FDR rooms have no classroom teachers as leaders, which was promised to the community. In-house staff are struggling to balance the high needs of the FDR cohort with the needs of their off-campus learners as well. Sometimes when going from an in-person class to an online one, these educators don't have time to wash their hands without being late to their next session. There's just not enough time. In-house lunches and recesses are being covered by our principal and vice principal, among others. Their expertise is greatly needed elsewhere. One of our kindergarten classrooms has no paraprofessional at all. FDR students cannot sing, play, or make any sort of sound in music class because they're in multi-grade level rooms. They are being underserved in a state-mandated subject. As schools are suddenly being further stripped, as teachers are reassigned to go to the Remote Learning Academy, the RLA, we are now short 2 literacy specialists, leaving only a 0.5 literacy specialist, and we just lost our enrichment and challenge support specialist. One of our special education teachers is being involuntarily transferred to the RLA, creating undoable caseloads for the remaining staff members and causing gaping holes in our system of care for our most vulnerable students. Safety regulations. In-house staff report that safety regulations are not being met. Maintaining a 6-foot distance is often impossible when communicating with masked students in a noisy room, not to mention when helping kindergartners take off coats and button pants. It is also hard to hear students' little voices when their mouths are masked. In-school staff lack the time to clean between students and still provide mandated IEP minutes. Communication around possible COVID exposure when students and staff are sick or being tested have not been transparent to staff. This is extremely disconcerting. Even after reminders from supervisors, custodians are not consistently wearing masks. Bathrooms, classrooms, and used offices are not being cleaned thoroughly or at all. Expectations must be explicit and broadly communicated district-wide. Bathroom cleaning logs should be posted and maintained. Numerous non-school facilities staff are disrupting teaching to do their work in our building during the school day. This should be done when classrooms are empty. Thank you for letting me share some of our Heath thoughts. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Katie Goldring, to share the rest of our field notes with you.
Thank you, Sherry. Katie, you're up next, and after you is Kevin McKenzie.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Katie, go ahead.
Thank you. I've been a teacher in Brookline for 10 years. Thank you for letting me speak. Our third section is technology professional development. Neither staff on or off campus have had enough technology training. Due to this lack of training in technology, paraprofessionals are struggling to help FDR students navigate through assignments. Tech platform training is imperative to facilitate student success. Many staff are teaching themselves district purchase tech like Zoom, Padlet, Pear Deck, and Screencastify. Formal training is crucial for proper implementation. IT problems. Computer problems and lack of help addressing them are making our work harder. Issues with building-based internet is causing problems. Teachers get kicked off of Zoom in the middle of a class, and FTR groups have worse internet connections than their off-campus peers. Remote students are randomly kicked off their Chromebooks. Audio issues are causing difficulty for students across grades to share their thinking and participate in class. The understaffed student help desk cannot serve all current needs. After multiple attempts to reach the help desk, desperate families reach out to our principal, vice principal, and tech integration teacher for support. We must appropriately staff the student help desk. Teacher help desk hours are reduced to Monday and Tuesday, 8 to 12, when teachers are contractually responsible for students. This is not helpful to anyone. Ours is a long report, but our building level voices must be heard and considered in a frank and honest way. While the listed concerns are specific to Heath, we know from colleagues across the district that similar issues are happening in all schools. Many challenges could have been averted if the reopening of schools had been better planned and if more forethought had been given to potential problems. Before rushing into hybrid, thrusting another set of educators and students into an untenable and unsafe situation, stop. Think all angles through carefully. Visit schools in person and speak with educators about real-time issues. Develop protocols and procedures. Please do your due diligence. Our system is struggling mightily with trust on all fronts, and it seems to be on a downward spiral. Please take the time now to ensure that the next phases of reopening are done right and draft an agreement with our union to govern our work fairly. Only then can we be set on a path to provide the best possible education to our students. In the end, our students are the ones who bear the brunt of all ill-prepared plans. We cannot let that happen, especially right now. They need us to get this right. With highest hopes for candor and collaboration, 40 members of the Heath School staff. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Katie. Kevin, you're up, and then Acacia Landfield.
Hello, my name is Kevin McKenzie, and I am a paraprofessional in the district. As someone who is required to report to the building in person each and every day, I echo the comments shared by colleagues who have spoken before me tonight. Critical roles at my building remain unfilled. Staff has been assigned to the RLA or other buildings, and their positions are empty. This does not speak to the number of involuntary transfers that have happened in our building that have also left vacancies in critical support positions. Our students in special education are being shortchanged. We are down a liaison and multiple paraprofessionals. From what my colleagues in the RLA tell me, their staffing situation is far worse. Special education staff are also being asked to support additional first-to-return students, not just special education students. In many instances, this is happening alone with support strictly from special education staff. The students the district has identified as most vulnerable are not getting the support they are entitled to. Our building's English language learner paraprofessionals were cut last year as a result of a district decision. Those cuts could not have been more poorly timed. Our students need them now, and they were taken away. The decisions of this school committee are the root cause of these issues. Inadvertently, you have created not just a staffing shortage, but a staffing crisis. This crisis is not strictly caused by the RIF notices of last spring, but of the decisions of this reopening plan. The K-8 buildings and the RLA both lack the staff that they need. This is going to have a profound effect on student learning. The stress and anxiety that this is all putting on staff in the buildings and the RLA is immense. Educators and students alike are being set up to fail because the district has not provided the resources needed for success. The district must hire new staff, and it must do so promptly. It must also negotiate a memorandum of agreement with urgency. These would provide much needed relief to your staff and provide us with many of the tools we need for success. Come and listen to us. Come and see what we are experiencing. Come and see what you have created. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kevin. Acacia, you're next, then Kayla Nicholson.
Hi, good evening. My name is Acacia Landfield, and I'm going to share my comments as well as those of my husband, who's handling our kids now, and who wanted to share words of another parent 7 weeks ago as a poignant reminder to us all. First, I wanted to echo Erica Anderson's comments, which she said so eloquently and which I was going to touch on as well. What I would like to additionally say is that since the metrics-based reopening plans of early August were reversed 180 degrees, parents of pre-literate learners, as well as older elementary kids alike, have known and are now seeing the real-life consequences of how the system is failing our children. To be clear, this is not in any way a commentary on their amazing teachers who are making gargantuan efforts with the terrible hand they've been dealt. Their efforts are heroic. Panel 4 has said it's as safe as it's going to get, or it's going to be for a long time to reopen. Yet red herrings, such as the mythical 6 feet and ventilation targets which exceed all other public spaces, keep on being used as political volleyball to keep our schools closed. Enough. They will never be perfect, not even 18 to 24 months from now, because this is not only this year, this school year, but next one too. There is a safe by all reasonable metrics, and we've had those reasonable and safe metrics since June with mitigation measures that backstop each other and which have allowed us to achieve pandemic resilience. The political stagnation is unsurprising, but it is not acceptable, especially given literally all of society is open now, except for some public schools and nightclubs. Meanwhile, after-school programs hosting thousands of kids, including over 20 YMCA sites around Greater Boston, are welcoming our elementary school kids to sit on Zoom all day long as our schools remain shuttered. As everyone knew, the responsibility and burden, not only for schooling, but keeping our young children safe, has been shifted to full-time to families who cannot bear this burden while providing for their families, and those with few or no protections, like the patchwork of care providers taking care of mixed cohorts of kids, far worse for public health by all objective measures. The real-life consequences include, our kids are getting headaches and nauseous from the screen. I'll skip over the laundry list of the terrible that remote learning is for most young learners. I think we all know. And please remember, this is happening to 6-year-olds who have now been out of school for longer than they ever were in school. 6 months of kindergarten and now 7 months without their schools, peers, and teachers. 2 questions which I hope the school committee can address tonight. Number 1, what alternative spaces have been considered to get 1st and 2nd grade back full-time in person as was announced in August? Please tell us the specific steps that have been taken to evaluate these spaces for 1st and 2nd grade. And number 2, why is Brookline Rec able to do a science curriculum outside in person in 3-hour blocks every day so that the only in-person education my children can get is for a fee private program run by the town, but not by their school? To conclude, and this is the second part of the comments, I would like to read the comments of another parent 7 weeks ago when the metrics-based reopening plans were reversed. He said it so eloquently, and his comments ring even truer today than they did in early August, given the 7 weeks that have passed. Quote, I was going to talk about how I found the plan presented last week to be well balanced. To be honest, after hearing what I heard tonight, I am quite disappointed. I was going to say that I saw a plan in line with public health experts' guidance. I don't seem to see that anymore. I was going to say that it was a plan that puts the interest of our children first by striving to get as many back in school as possible. I don't see that anymore. I was going to say that I saw a plan that, when we return to in-person instruction, would focus on the safety and well-being of everyone, children, teachers, and other staff. but that doesn't seem to be the case anymore because there's no date for any return to in-person instruction. I want to remind everyone that in Massachusetts, the test positivity rate, and this was back 7 weeks ago, is below 2%. I believe it's under 1% now, but don't quote me. In Brookline, it's below 1%. I'm not an infectious disease expert, but if you listen to the experts, the CDC has said that extended school closures are harmful to children, and available evidence provides reason to believe that in-person schooling is in the best interest of students. Dr. Fauci has said that if you are in one of the areas of low transmission, you can get back to school with the kinds of precautions that you do in general society. The Mass Department of Education has said that we want to start the school year with as many students as possible returning to in-person settings. And with the input of infectious disease experts, they have put in their guidance that they believe the risk of transmission in schools is likely lower than the risk of transmission in many other settings. I was going to say a lot of other things, but I think I'm going to skip to the end and say, if this committee chooses not to support a plan of in-person instruction, how can I look my 6-year-old son in the eye and with any fact-based rationale tell him that his parents can go out to dinner on a Friday night, even sitting inside, that his neighbor can go to the fitness center or the hairdresser, that people can go to the casino, but he cannot go back to school because schools are only being prioritized for the reopening together with nightclubs? How can I look him in the eye and tell him that his sister can go back to preschool and actually has been able to go all summer long, including now, but he can't go back to school? How can I teach my 6-year-old that the school is important if all he has to experience is being left on an iPad for a couple hours a day? I would like to remind everyone that the decision for the school committee should not be one of safety. Expert after expert at all levels, including the health experts engaged by Brookline that informed the last plan, have stated that with the right precautions, the risk is very low. The decision of the school committee should be to do what's best for our children, and what's best for our children is in-person instruction. And these are now my final comments. We are collectively failing our children. Please use your political capital and open our schools. Get your hands dirty, as another speaker said. We know it's hard, but it is right. It is the only right thing to do. Keeping our schools closed is not safe by any health nor safety metric. Please stop the largest failure by a public institution perhaps ever. Open our schools, get first and second graders back in person full-time, and the rest of the kids to robust hybrid. Thank you.
Before we have our next speaker, I would just like to remind everyone that if you could please confine your public comment to 3 minutes. We've had a few speakers now who have gone more than double that. I don't like to interrupt people. I'm trying to respect that a lot of you have important things to say, but in deference to some other community members who also want to have an opportunity to speak, I'd appreciate if you could really try to keep your remarks within 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, David. After Kayla is Graciela Mohammadi. Kayla, you're up.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Wonderful. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm a teacher here in Brookline. I know many families are frustrated with the way online learning is going. In particular, that their children aren't getting enough individualized attention during online classes. I just wanted the public to know that teachers are trying the best they can, but the district has created a staffing crisis. The district has not hired enough staff to concurrently teach online, in person, and watch the first to return students. So consequently, many valuable paraprofessionals who could be a second adult to help your child online have been reduced to a mere babysitter inside the school buildings. Paraprofessionals could be used as second adults in Zoom meetings to break kids into smaller groups and give more individualized attention. Instead, they're being forced to watch the first to return students all day on their computers, their talents wasted. Families, this is why it seems like your child is bored and frustrated on Zoom. The classroom teachers have no other choice but to teach whole class lessons all day because they've had their support staff taken away from them. Believe me, we teachers don't want to teach whole class lessons all day, but without paras to help run small groups, the district has given us no choice. Families, please contact your school committee members and urge them to let the paraprofessionals help the classroom teachers online and hire additional staff to supervise the first to return students. School committee, please hire additional staff to watch the in-person students so that the paras can help make online learning more individualized for students. Dr. Marini had previously mentioned in a school committee meeting about hiring building subs. Please allow that to come to fruition so we can correct this grossly inequitable experience. We teachers are trying our best, but we can't make chicken soup out of chicken poop. Thank you very much for listening.
Graciela, you're next, and then Kathy Hitchcock.
Hello, my name is Graciela Mohammadi, and I am reading a list of questions that was compiled by the 9th grade science staff from Old Lincoln High School. On September 23rd, BHS staff received an email from Anthony Meyer with regard to hybrid, stating that mid-October and 9th grade are what we at BHS are focusing on. The 9th grade physics team has compiled a list of questions regarding this process. Number 1, where will 9th grade be housed, OLS or 115? If OLS, where will science be held, as most science rooms are currently in use by first to return students or require significant strategic planning, as 2 physics classrooms are located in the gym of OLS, where distancing is possible, but the ability to hear each other is severely compromised with distance and masks. Will teachers be allotted time to try out technology in classroom spaces and plan such that students can participate equitably in a hybrid class the way we spent time thinking about equitable access for remote? The challenges are different, but equally difficult. If we are at 115, physics teachers have a lot of equipment for labs that we could access in a hybrid setting. Who will spend the days necessary to pack and move equipment such that both 9th grade and AP Physics can access equipment? A move that we made to OLS from 115 only 1.5 years ago. If we are charged with this task, will we also be expected to teach our full load while simultaneously packing, moving, unpacking, inventorying equipment after the move, and setting up brand new classrooms? Number 6, will teachers be given significant PD time to plan for the massive pedagogical shift required for equitable hybrid learning in a physics classroom, one that allows for in-person students to take advantage of science equipment while students at home observe or participate in asynchronous learning? Or is the town prepared to accept that students, regardless of model, will only participate in labs that we have reimagined for remote learning but require minimal equipment? Number 7, what will the regular ventilation inspections be? What happens if a good room ends up failing? What will be the COVID testing procedure for adults in the building? Will there be a regular free testing for educators and students? What's the policy if one of us has to quarantine but isn't ill and can teach remotely? Are there subs who will be able to supervise students as long as they log into class? Do we have subs in general? Will we be expected to teach in person and remotely within the same class period? And if not, what happens with classes that only have a few remote only students in them? Will those students be removed and placed in an entirely online class? If yes, how will the time be split? And will the Wi-Fi be able to handle every student in class also being logged on to Zoom in order to allow for collaboration? Will there be any training if we will be expected to use any new equipment such as the OWL cameras shown to us during the opening days? Will there be practice days when teachers are in the buildings with only the first to return students? This would allow us to try out the cameras and make sure classrooms are ready to go. Why move into buildings during the flu season? Yes, sir, but I am speaking on behalf of an entire department from the high school. Why move into buildings during the flu season? Won't that cause significant absence due to COVID-like symptoms? Have plans been made for lunch? Where will students eat? And will there be enough available adults to supervise them? How will students be grouped? There are already 2 cohorts of 9th graders. Will they be broken up into smaller groups in order to maintain social distancing in the small classrooms? Many stickers on doors indicate that the air exchange is less than acceptable, but it has a green check. This is confusing. Bathrooms and some rooms have red checks. How will this be addressed? The stickers also state that opening windows helps air exchange. What will the actual acceptable values be, and what happens on cold days? These are only a few of the questions that were asked by the department specific to the 9th grade team being asked to return first in a proposed hybrid model. We hope that all of these questions are considered by all of those planning this hybrid model prior to announcing a start date. Thank you.
Thank you, Graciela. Kathy Hitchcock is next, and then Sherry Simmons.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kathy Hitchcock. I am a teacher at OLS. This year I'm teaching 9th grade geometry. I live in Brookline. I've lived here for almost 25 years. My youngest is a senior at BHS. We've had a lot of conversations so far about looking at things from what I call more the 30,000 foot level. Graciela Mohammadi brought it down a bit. And I want to take a look at something that's going on from a much more micro level. So I wrote a letter this morning to the school committee and to Dr. Marini. So my letter is as follows. I'm writing to let you know that Canvas is still not operating for the most vulnerable students in my classes. Of the 39 students in my 9th grade college prep geometry classes, roughly 50% are on IEPs. Of the same 39 students, about 46% receive free or reduced lunch. Yet these students are still not able to access the BHS learning management system, also known as Canvas. Now, as we know, students on IEPs and students living at or close to the poverty line were the ones who lost the most academically during remote learning last spring. And this is true not just in Brookline, but around the country. At BHS, because of our spring experience, we're focusing on executive functioning this year. One of our goals is to have students access and submit all of their work through Canvas. We want them to have all of their academics in one place. Now, unfortunately, because of a slew of technical issues, the students all have different course numbers assigned to them. These 39 students are not yet on Canvas for their math classes. We as a math, and I'm going off the letter now, but we as a math team at OLS plan together and give a lot of the same assignments together. So in just 3 class meetings, my most needy and most vulnerable students, I would say that we have missed out on homework automatically submitted on Canvas, recording a video on Canvas, using the discussion feature of Canvas, engaging in a Canvas scavenger hunt to learn about all the different capabilities of the LMS, the learning management system. I and my co-teacher have filled out the Google Forms to get help. We've also emailed our tech folks, who are some of the best around. I can't say enough good things about them, but they are overwhelmed. I believe they're working around the clock to get things properly set up for all of us, and they're dealing with emergencies. There's just not enough person power to do this work in a timely fashion. And indeed, when teachers receive schedules on the Monday before school opening on Wednesday, there wasn't a lot of time to figure out the glitches. It is unclear to me why this total changeover to online learning and the concomitant technical issues, the central administration did not anticipate the need of having to hire more ed techs to better manage and service all of the issues. In the meantime, my most vulnerable and fragile students are losing out on carefully and thoughtfully designed activities which incorporate the Canvas learning management system. I am extremely worried that we are failing those students who most need our help. Now, I that was my letter. This afternoon at approximately 5 o'clock, I read my email saying that some work had been done, but unfortunately it's not what had been requested. And I'm lucky. I've been here for a long time and I feel like I can write letters like this. I'm not sure that all of my colleagues who may be going through the same things would be feeling the same way. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Sherry, you are up, and then Jessica Wender-Schubel.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Great. Well, thank you for taking my comments. I'll be brief, as I'm sure we're all looking forward to hearing the update on reopening to be shared later in the meeting. I'm the parent of a third grader at the Lawrence School. I'm also a scientist in the biotech and pharma sector with substantial expertise in microbiology and infectious disease drug development, so I feel qualified to comment here on issues of public health. I think the issue, as we've heard tonight, at the front of all our minds is how to safely reopen our schools for in-person instruction, which is so important for the mental and physical well-being of our children. And I do commend all the hard work that's been done to date by teachers, school committee, and volunteer expert panels. However, as has been pointed out by many speakers, there's a substantial issue with the lack of clear metrics governing decisions on how schools will be reopened. If such metrics exist, they have not been laid out to the community. Much of the emotion around the issue could be more productively directed to specifics if we had a clear set of guidelines. In public meetings of the school committee and expert panels, we have heard about the impressive work happening to upgrade the ventilation systems in our schools and reports from the expert panel on health and safety. Given all that, are we not now at a point where we can get answers to the following set of questions? Number one, how many classrooms need to pass ventilation thresholds for each grade to return? Number two, how long will it be until we have such ventilation in all classrooms? Is there not at this point a clear timeline? Can this please be shared with the community? Number three, what is holding up additional in-person meetups? As has been commented previously, there's been very little plus in the remote plus model, and it's completely unclear why that is. Fourth, will decisions on grades returning be made district-wide or school by school? Will this be a mandate by central administration or by individual school leaders? Number five, what is the acceptable level of community transmission of coronavirus that we consider safe for in-person instruction, considering that our town already has very low infection rates? In fact, the latest data indicates that Brookline has a 0.2% positivity rate in the last 2 weeks. We are extremely unlikely to do better than this until there's a vaccine. What level of infection and surveillance testing do we need to implement in our schools to help ensure that everyone feels safe? What is the plan to get there? If there is not a plan for testing, when will there be, and what needs to be done? Finally, if we do move to a hybrid model, what is the threshold for returning to remote instruction? Transparency, quantitative metrics, and a clear timeline for reopening are critical. I hope we will hear more about the last point today, but I strongly urge the school committee to push for answers to these questions. There's a lot of frustration in the community about the lack of clarity on all of these issues. Thanks for hearing my comments.
Thank you, Sherry. Jessica, you're up, and then Lauren Bernard.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Jess.
Thank you, Zan. Beginning in May, and more pointedly since July 14th, which is the date we filed to begin negotiations, the BEU has sought to understand how the district intends to schedule, staff, and sustain healthy and safe in-person learning. In the time since the school committee's first meeting with us over a month later, on August 21, we have gotten two answers and two only. By generating airflow, which is still not fully certified 17 days in, and by staff being expected to be flexible entirely in regard to what and how much they will be expected to do and when. Now the district has announced they're going full speed ahead to bring in grades 1 through 5 and 9 into buildings, in addition to pre-K and kindergarten, and students classified as vulnerable. There are not healthy and safe learning conditions now, and staffing is completely inadequate in some buildings, as you're hearing. Families and educators deserve to know how this will be corrected before they are expected to show up in buildings and significantly increase the concentration of people there, therefore the health and safety risks. The BEU is not willing to be complicit with messaging that does not tell the truth, as you hear, about the seriousness of the problems at hand. We know the community wants transparency, and educators have been concerned that you, the school committee, are not being given a true picture. We wonder if the lack of information is why you have been unwilling to commit to a memorandum of an agreement with stricter compliance requirements around health and safety protocols, a framework for sufficient staffing, and a structure for learning that is healthy for children. In regard to those who would dismiss science as a myth, as Dr. Fauci confirms that, quote, there is much more aerosol transmission than we thought. This is 15 feet, not 6 and not 3. Fans are drowning out voices. Social distancing in many kindergarten rooms is impossible while teaching is underway. Where will the added children and staff be? Educators report that they are now in spaces that are not labeled as safe. Masks are not on. Food can't be eaten safely, and custodial, that is cleaning work, is understaffed. Picture young English language learners in libraries turned into veritable one-room schoolhouses because of understaffing, speaking over one another in different languages not understood by their proctors who are not getting their teaching jobs done or their own time for lunch, are with students who are using Chromebooks that are too weak to stream in classes that have to be remote because the number of schools in Brookline has multiplied without an appropriate increase in staff. If you think that in-school learning is superior by definition, your information is lacking. Will hybrid work? Not if learning conditions are not healthy and every educator is left to deliver 2 kinds of school at once because of this understaffing. There is very little evidence that this district is ready to deliver what it's going to promise you tonight. We believe that the community deserves an MOA that is concrete and realistic about what can be delivered to children and families, however flexible the staff strives to be. Educators prefer to teach in person, but only under conditions that are safe, healthy and safe and effective for our students. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jess. Lauren, you're up and you're our last speaker.
Good evening. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Great. This is Lauren Bernard, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 8. I sit on the panel 2 of the expert advisory panels of the public schools of Brookline, which I'm very honored to do. And lastly, as many people know, I direct what at one time was last year was the largest after school program in the district. And my question, I'd like it to dovetail on a woman who spoke about 4 or 5 speakers ago, whose name, I'm sorry, escapes me. But while I understand the getting into hybrid is the focus that everybody is focused on right now, I really would appreciate the school committee, particularly policy subcommittee, looking at the after school situation, because as the speaker said, right now, parents are sending their kids in many different directions for after school activities because more and more people do have to go back to work. And the concern is they're creating cohorts all over the place and there's a loss of control. This is about safety. And I urge you to contact our principals and ask them to work with us to devise, room sharing and outdoor spaces and all of that kind of thing for after school programs other than just extended day. Right now, extended day, principals have been given that mandate for extended day, but not for my program, not for Steps to Success, as far as I know, and not for some others that are considered in-house programs. But I urge you to do that because I know my neighbors and my former families in my program are not, it's not a question of childcare. They're desperate for their children to have socialization since they're in a remote setting. They want it to be safe and they want it to be familiar, but really they're very worried about the social emotional health of their children and keeping them on site in programs that are familiar and that understand the buildings like ours and are willing to do the cleaning that needs to be done, and all of that is not just a question of social emotional health, it's a question of health and safety. So I urge you in your work coming in the next few weeks to really think about that. I know it's not the hot thing on your plate right now, and I understand that, but I do urge you to give this very careful consideration. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lauren. That concludes our public comment. Just to remind the public, I know it's frustrating. We don't respond to each of the points and the questions that the public brings up. We do listen, we do take notes. Hopefully in the next section, when we talk about update on our fall reopening plans, you will hear answers to many of the questions. We will try to bring some of those questions up ourselves if we don't hear the answers, but do know that we appreciate the questions, we appreciate people's comments, and we do take them in. So with that, Casey, are we turning it over to you for an update on the fall reopening?
That's right. That would be great. Thanks, Suzanne.
Thank you.
So before I jump in with our presentation tonight, I did want to update, let the school committee know, as well as folks watching tonight, that because Superintendent Marini couldn't make it tonight, the presentation is truncated. It'll be a lot shorter, simply because I know he wanted to have he wanted to lead a more robust discussion about this. But as Suzanne mentioned, I'm hoping to present some key info that I think folks are looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, Andy, I can see you on my screen. Can you just give me a thumbs up if you can see my slides? Great, thank you. And just a reminder for folks who are looking for these slides afterwards, the presentation is always on the school website with a /reopen. So I'll get right to it as the community is asking for this beyond anything else. What we have here are target dates that were set with principals and curriculum coordinators for when we will begin to transition to a hybrid learning model. So you'll see here that beginning Tuesday, October 20th, the goal is to bring back grades 1 and 2 in a hybrid mode. And then that following week on Monday, after giving the first and second graders some time to acclimate to being back in the building, for some meeting their teachers in person for the first time, seeing their classmates, and just becoming used to moving about in the building, that following Monday, we are aiming to bring back grades 3 and 5. So I just want to mention again, I know there are a lot of questions, and I want to assure the community that we are asking most, if not all of them. Again, what I don't want to try to do is answer them when we have experts who are much better positioned to do so, which includes the superintendent. Let me move on to the next slide, and I'm happy to take questions from the committee. We only have 2 slides tonight. We have begun receiving requests from caregivers to move in and out of the remote learning academy. And so this, as you can imagine, creates some great disruption when these requests are made, when the shifts are made. And so I want to put some dates out there for the community. So we will open up requests for changing the different models we'll open it up on November 2nd and close requests on November 6th. So this is when we will take requests from caregivers to move between the different models. Once a change is requested, students will begin in their new classes on November 16th. This will give principals and teachers time to prepare. It's hard to predict at this point where we will be at this point in November in terms of a hybrid mode, or potentially we have more students in than a hybrid mode. So this will give us the time to be able to make those changes and have the student enter beginning November 16th. So between now and November 16th, however, there will be no change requests granted unless there are circumstances that are specific to special education, English language learning, and/or socio-emotional functioning. And we would need agreement from Meg Massini and the respective K-8 principal, caregivers, and the relevant support staff. So a special education director, English language learning staff, or guidance staff would be some examples there. Those are the slides that we have tonight. I want to put these dates back up here for a little bit, but I'm happy to take questions and do my best. Mariah.
Sorry, let's take some questions. I can't see everybody.
I'll stop the screen share so folks can see.
Thank you.
Was I called on? Did I hear that?
I did, but I realized that that was probably the chair's job. So my
Oh, okay. Then I will.
Go ahead, Mariah.
My question is, first off, thank you for the slides. Was there a update to the dates for grades 6 through 8 and 9 through 12?
I do not have the update for middle school dates. And then I believe 9th, we're working with the high school on an October date as well.
Okay. I have comments, but I'll hold them. That was just my one question.
Yeah, so I imagine we have lots of questions. And we can take comments. So Maraj, if you want to go ahead, you can have the floor. We'll give everybody at least one chance to have the floor.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. So my next question, I guess my first question is, we really need the timeline for all the grades, and not just 1 through 5, although that's a great start. My next comment is there a timeline for or more information about how quickly plus activities are going to be provisioned across the schools? Because I agree with the comments that are out there about needing to start to have those activities, really needing those to be robust at this point.
Sure. So I'd have to get back to you on that. I know that principals have been scheduling for that. I think we're still waiting on tents, not that we need tents for that to happen. So I can get back to the committee with that.
Okay, then my next comment would be, I actually want to go back to the timeline, which is I feel like we need to have kids back in school on hybrid sooner than the 20th or the 28th or whatever the dates were. I really would like to see people back as early as right after Columbus Day, if not sooner, especially for the 1st and 2nd graders. My heart really, really hurt reading some of the emails that and my brain really hurt too, reading the emails from families and what kids are going through. And I also hear, and I felt terrible hearing about what some of the stress that staff are under too. And I wonder what we are, as a school committee, I'm a newbie to school committee, but we need to, this is to us, to me, what are we doing to get the resources that we need to be able to fill in these gaps? I mean, we've heard about the IT staff and the fact that ed tech and the help desk are overwhelmed, and we're hearing that from the front lines, and the cleaning staff and what needs to be done there. You know, there's some things around protocols, but also I think it's just a question of like human resources, actual people, right? That we need people and the paraprofessionals in the rooms and everything else. So to what extent are we, how can we make this happen to put our foot on the gas of whatever resources we need to be able to provide to make this happen? Because I feel like there's this circular firing squad, and teachers are mad and parents are mad and they're pointing at each other, and really that's not good for anyone. And a lot of this, if we could just get more people, would really be helped. So then I have 2 specific questions now. One is, I believe at our last meeting, Michelle, you said that there would be the curriculum posted. Am I remembering correctly that the curriculas would be posted? Have those been posted yet?
So they haven't been switched yet. We're hoping by the end of this week, and that's just been some tweaking that had to be done. But yes, they will be, they're ready to go.
And will families be notified when those, like, will there be an email out to parents or something, or to caregivers notifying them that they're up if they want to see them?
That's usually Erin's. I'm going to pass.
Yeah, we can certainly do that. Definitely.
Okay. And then my last question is, has there been any kindergarten or first to return students that have needed to be quarantined or isolated or whatever the right terminology is? And if so, what did they do for, I'll say particularly the kindergarten students, what happened for their school?
So to my knowledge, we have not had any kindergartners or forced to return students who have needed to be quarantined.
Thank you.
Mariah, I just wanted to get back to quickly when you had started off with your first, I think it was a comment about sooner than October 20th. We did talk about that as a whole group, both coordinators and principals. And one of the biggest pieces, one of the reasons why we would need more time is that this is a shift in teaching and in instruction. So there's a lot of lesson planning and reimagining of the curricula that needs to happen to decide what activities can be, must be taught live, and then what can students get in an asynchronous fashion. Some things can just lend themselves better, like perhaps math fluency can be done asynchronously, but certain things just can't be done and must be done live. And so principals really wanted that time to work with their grade level teams and other teachers to work through all that, and they didn't want to be rushed. They didn't want to be rushed and give a product that they couldn't stand behind, recognizing that when kids come in, they're coming in 2 full days, which is really great, don't get me wrong, and is an improvement from what they're getting now. But it is just those 2 days, and they want to make sure that those 2 days in person and those 2 days in remote are as high quality as they can push it.
And just to respond to that, when you're saying that and you're saying asynchronous, it makes it sound like, and I hope it's not the case, that the trade-off from going from fully remote to hybrid is that we get 2 days of in-person and 2 days where kids are essentially by themselves doing asynchronous activities.
Yeah, no, sorry, I should clarify. So the days when students are remote, we are still hoping to push, I guess I should distinguish between synchronous, meaning live, versus in-person.
Okay.
So what we're trying to plan for is it's a mix of synchronous and asynchronous on the remote days. I hope that's clearer.
Yeah, can I just jump in with that, Casey? So yeah, so learning will continue all week long, whether you're in school for 2 days with a teacher or you're out of school. And so, but even when you're out of school, you aren't going to be sitting in front of a screen for the 6 hours to do your work. So I think that's sort of the idea when we talk about synchronous and asynchronous. When are you interacting directly with the teacher? When do you have some independent work going on during the 2 days that you are not in school? And then how do we keep the connection between the classroom teacher all week long for students who are, when they're not in school and when they are in school?
I think one other piece too, in terms of needing a little bit more time that we heard from principals and coordinators, is right now they're running a fully remote schedule for students in grades 1 through 8, and transitioning to this hybrid schedule where half of the students are in the building, half the week, and vice versa. It's just like any schedule creation, does take a lot of time. And with all of this shared staff we have across our 8, now 9 schools with the RLA, we just need to make sure that all of the pieces are actually going to fit into that puzzle. And that does take, as you know, scheduling we normally do all summer. So this is, again, another change that we're asking our school leaders to do, and also incorporate things like mass breaks and snack breaks and hand washing breaks, and making sure the rooms are ready, thinking about middle school specifically, making sure kids aren't passing each other in the hallways at the same time. And so I do think it just takes a little bit more time than someone who, like, personally, I've never created a schedule. So you know, you might think it's kind of an easy flip to go from a remote schedule to a hybrid schedule, but in talking with our school leaders who do this every single year, we just need to give them that amount of time in order to create something that's going to be beneficial to students who are in person in the buildings and also students who are at home.
But just to be clear, for the high school, they developed a schedule that was already ready to go for hybrid, right? So.
Correct. They've been working on that the entire time. That was their the model that they chose to run with. And so they've had since August to plan that.
Okay, Barbara, then.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to give an update, Suzanne,
Yep.
that I did get some message from Principal Meyer from the high school, and for 9th grade, the target date to open would be October 20th. And then for the other grades, we're looking at early November.
Okay, Barbara, and then, oh, Claire, did you want to respond to this, or you?
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of like talk about something that happened at the high school recently that kind of relates to it, if that's okay. So this is just a comment about, so I was listening to the public comment and my heart was also hurting on behalf of the parents and teachers. And I, want to go back as much as everybody else does. But at the same time, I think we really should be cautious about not rushing it because, the high schoolers have already experienced some things have been rushed. For example, the juniors went back to get materials like books and, biology stuff. And it was just so rushed and poorly organized. There were 500 people in a crammed line, no social distancing. People were taking off masks. People were hugging. It was just, and like 100 people ended up not getting their materials. And I know that's like anecdotal and just happened. But I also think that we don't want to go back to a system that's not going to work for people. And that's going to be worse, going to do more harm than good. And so I just want to say, it's annoying and upsetting that it's going to take a while to plan, but I also don't think that we should necessarily push too hard to hurry up the process, just for the, sake of students also.
Thank you, Claire. Barbara, and then Andy.
Yeah, I have a comment and I have a couple of questions. First of all, I want to say to the people in front of us right now on the school committee, how difficult this must be to sit and listen and be told repeatedly how things are not working. And I want to say that I don't think that's fair. I look at the teachers in the schools and I look at all of you who are working in town hall to make the school openings happen is in as safe a way as possible. And all I can say is thank you. I think you have worked very, very hard. You have tried to do your best, but things take a long time. We are not a small school system. We are a fairly large school system. And there are many complicated problems that have to be worked out. And this doesn't always set with people. It sometimes is upsetting to parents because their children aren't getting what they think they should be getting. But we may not at this point in time see or be able to provide exactly that. And we are working toward it. And I think you've done a fabulous job. Yes, not everything has worked, but that's life. And sometimes you just have to say, I've done the best I can. I'm sorry I didn't meet all of the things the needs you wanted me to meet, but we will get to it. And that's basically what we've been doing. And so I want to say to you, thank you for all your hard work and all that you have done and all that you will continue to do. Now, having said that, I'm going to ask a couple of questions. First of all, how are we doing on hiring teachers that we need? Do we have many that we still need to hire? And also, what is happening with the ability to hire substitutes? Because clearly we're going to need substitutes as time goes on. How are we doing with the hiring picture overall?
Sure. So hiring has been difficult. I can tell you that the para pipeline is pretty dry. We don't have a lot of folks applying. So we still have open positions that were budgeted for. So we're having trouble filling those, to be quite honest. I know that Erin spoke with HR, Chris Nyland in particular, about subs, so she can speak a little bit on that piece.
Sure, yeah. So similar to the para pipeline, we're just not getting as many folks applying to be substitutes in our system as well. So the numbers of subs that we have available to either disperse as full-time building subs, which is essentially what we believe is the right thing to do, or the number of subs that we could have going across the district, even in a remote fashion, is just not as many as we normally have in other years. And so that's causing some concerns as well as we move towards models where more folks are coming into the building and cold and flu season comes around.
And I should say that this is also pretty similar in the districts around us too, just in sitting in on some of the meetings with the state's superintendents.
Yeah, thank you.
Andy, did you want to speak or ask questions?
Sure. Yeah, Barbara actually asked one of my questions about hiring paras and subs, and also whether our difficulties were being replicated in other places or whether there's a Brookline specific problem that we could try to address. But it sounds like it's the former. Yeah, I also had a follow-up on the hybrid scheduling. I seem to recall that at least in an early version of the hybrid plan, like back in August, the idea was that the specials would be concentrated on the days when people were at home. And wondering if is that still the concept, or are we moving away from that? And secondly, I know it's not really the Brookline way to sort of have things be planned like across the district rather than in the individual buildings, but do you think we could have some economies of scale in this emergency by having some kind of unified planning of the hybrid model rather than leaving it to every principal to figure everything out for themselves?
Yeah, I'll let Michelle take your first question in terms of specials and scheduling of those. But we are actually planning district-wide, of course, with input from principals and coordinators because of the economies of scale available to us.
Yeah, and I think, Casey, that's exactly part of like the answer to the question you asked about, concentrating specials on days that students were home. It's become a little more complex to schedule directly that way. And so what we need to do is sort of lay out all of first of all, our goals for the week and all of the things that we want students to experience during the week, and then determine how we can equitably share those courses and schedule them so that students do get that. And realizing that for specialists, it may not work to only be remote just because of the sheer number of courses they'd need to teach during the week because students would be on a split schedule. But it may be that we can, reimagine how we group our classes to do that, but that's the work that we need to do. And so that still may be in play, but I wouldn't say it's the only thing in play right now in scheduling.
I'm wondering, I do have a question. I'm going to jump in. I know we have Dave Gayshak is here, and we've got Matt and Mary Ellen, and Andy is on panel 4. I've heard a lot from the community and from the teachers, just wondering about the process of healthy and safe classrooms. I know that panel 4 has done a lot of work, and that Matt's office has done a lot of work in checking out ventilation and figuring out what we need. I'm wondering if someone would be willing to just kind of give us an update on where we are on that status in our classrooms, or where people can go. I believe panel 4 has recommendations that are posted to just help people understand this just a little bit. Some of us have been in lots of meetings about this, but I don't think the public has for the most part. And the teachers have heard some of this certainly as well, but would that be possible for someone to kind of give us an update on how we're doing? Yeah, Mary Ellen, you're on.
I'll jump off and then Matt will chime in with details, and we'll tag team on this, and Andy might chime in with panel 4 updates. But we have with the great assistance of the operations department in the school led by Matt Gillis, and with Charlie Simmons, Public Buildings Division, using the panel 4 recommendations, have sort of launched into wholesale updates around our HVAC systems, and looking at air quality, and doing a variety of things for improving the air quality in our schools and temperatures and things like that, and addressed a number of issues and concerns around bathroom fans and ventilation, around cleaning protocols, PPE, all of which Matt can give you in detail. We've added HEPA filters into classrooms that didn't meet the panel 4's recommendation of 4 air exchanges per hour in classrooms, and provided PPE and cleaning supplies to every classroom and every teacher as well. And school committee just recently passed 3 policies, one of which was a face mask policy. We have addressed to some points earlier. We have addressed by supervisor to employees around wearing masks and being attentive to that as well. That has been addressed for with our custodians and our food service and any other employees in the building. Matt, do you want to give an update on where we are with sort of delivery of PPE and HEPA filters? I know there were some delays at that point in ad.
Sure. So the PPE for classrooms up to grade 5 have been delivered today, and we're working on 6 through 8 in the high school thereafter.
Whoops, did I lose
Did we
Matt?
lose you, Matt?
I still haven't filled, and so we've been piecemealing it with some other vendors to get things together. But
sorry to interrupt, Matt. I think we lost you for a really crucial segment there. You told us that PPE had been delivered for 1 through 5 today, and we're waiting on other grades, and then you cut out.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So with the PPE we delivered through grade 5 today, one of the things that was sort of holding that back with getting to all the classrooms was the triggers for the spray bottles. And before the pandemic, this was...
Whoops. Matt, we lost you again.
Can I come back? Can we come back to this in about 10, 15 minutes?
Sure.
I'm in the car. I need to get home for my kids.
Get home and get online, and then we'll talk
Yeah.
to you. That'd be great. Thank you, Matt. I did want to ask Matt, though, about the stickers, because I think the stickers, I was putting some stickers on some classrooms the other weekend, and the way they read, it's confusing, but if it does have a green check, that means that they figured out how to make it okay. Can we just be clear about that? Because it's,
yes.
Okay. So sometimes you have to add different parts of that sticker to get to where you need to be. David, help me out here.
Happy to. So coming from Panel 4's perspective, heavily informed by Dr. Joe Allen and the Harvard Healthy Buildings team, we're the ones who put together that recommended enhanced ventilation standard that Matt and his team are working towards. I want to really stress to folks, this is not a baseline health and safety standard. This does not mean that when a room doesn't have a sticker on it or isn't up to 4 air changes an hour, that it's unsafe to enter. These standards are intentionally designed, speaking as the co-chair of the panel that designed them, to be extra layers of protection on top of masking, distancing, and hand hygiene and all the other things we're doing. And so I think many on panel 4 are often maybe feel a little bit concerned that these have been blown out of proportion into creating a sticking point where they weren't intended to be a sticking point. They were meant to be an extra layer of protection to keep everybody's risk low. So I'll say that. In terms of the mechanics of them, the way I understand Matt's doing it is measuring the baseline ventilation systems capabilities in each room to deliver either, on the one hand, outside air, which does not need to be filtered, or second component, filtered recirculated air, as long as that filtration is at a MERV 13 level or higher. So recirculated air only counts if it's at that MERV 13 level, but outside air counts no matter what filtration level is. And coming up with an air changes per hour number, and then filling the gap, if there is one, between that number and initially 4 and ultimately down the road 5 air changes per hour with portable HEPA filtration, which can fill the entire gap if needed. All you have to do is size, put 1 or 2 or 3 cleaners in a room to meet whatever the mathematical gap is. The window opening air changes per hour are extra bonus on top of that. They are not being relied upon. They are purely for illustrative purposes, that if classroom 101 that has a baseline of 2.5 air changes per hour from its HVAC system, plus another 2 air changes per hour from its portable HEPA filter, if you want to get an extra 2 more air changes per hour to get up to, I think my math would take me up to 6.5 there, opening a window will do that. We're not, as far as I know from Matt, relying on open windows for part of the baseline calculation. And so that's this is all an above and beyond measure. This is meant, we think it's worthwhile to do. We think it's a good investment of resources to help keep everybody safe alongside the other protective measures to provide that all backstop each other. So none of them has to be perfect. But I want to stress that none of them has to be perfect piece. Every time someone takes off a mask, or every time someone has to go within 6 feet of someone else, particularly of a kid, to help with taking off a coat or putting on a coat, or addressing a bloody nose or helping clean up tears, that's not putting people at undue risk. All these measures are meant to be backstopping each other, multiple layers of defense, so that we're not reliant on 100% perfection in any one of them, or even close. So that's a quick summary. Happy to answer questions, Suzanne, but I think the general sense of panel 4 is that we are more prepared to bring more students back more quickly than has been the case so far.
Thank you. Yeah. And for those who want to think about this some more and read over, could you just remind us again of where the recommendations are available for people to look at?
Sure. Probably the easiest way to get to it is to search in your web browser Remote Learning Task Force or Brookline Public Schools Remote Learning Task Force. Under that page, all 4 of the panels are listed. We're panel 4, and you can see by date a list of our meeting recordings, recommendations on ventilation, diagnostic testing, metrics for opening and closing, et cetera. And just for those who don't know, panel 4 is, I'm kind of the outlier on panel 4. I'm coordinating and administrating, but the folks who are doing the real work and providing the real expertise on panel 4 are infectious disease physicians, public health specialists, pediatricians, occupational health specialists, people who do this day in, day out for their real jobs and know what they're talking about. So that's where this is coming.
Yeah, thank you so much, David. Thank you so much for the work you've done and for all of your panel members, all of the panels, and 1 through 4, and panel 4 in particular in this area. We are so much indebted for your support and help. It's been invaluable. Thank you. Others who have questions or comments? Jennifer?
I actually don't have as many questions or comments as I thought that I would, because we really did not get a lot of information tonight due to a number of circumstances. I was hoping that we would get some more information and specifically on
when we would be going hybrid and when the plus model would be implemented. I was expecting that it might be earlier in October than it is. I wanted to, I guess I'm a little unclear onto what the cause for the delay is in the hybrid. We've heard a number of pieces, and I just am wondering if someone can restate that for me so that I can be really clear about why it's like October 20 or October 26. I'm just trying to wrap my brain around this. And when we have conversations with people in the community, I just think it's important as a school committee member to be really clear on what those reasons are specifically, because we get a lot of emails and requests for this information. And I think it'd be great if we could be just succinct about that, or to help me to do that.
So Jennifer, I'm just going to jump in. I'll come back in a minute, but to Jennifer's point, I had thought we were going to have some principals attending. Did they not make it? And they were going to help us kind of think through what this is about.
Yeah, so the superintendent called me to inform principals because he wasn't going to be on tonight. He really wanted to lead that, so he had asked that they not come on.
Okay, thank you. Okay, sorry, Jennifer. Go ahead.
That's okay. I mean, this is, I feel like I was anticipating having lots of follow-up questions and information, and we just 2 slides with a couple of dates is not really what we were hoping for. So one of the things I wanted to go back to, I think Mariah brought this up earlier, I remember asking last week at our school, or the last meeting, whenever it was, at the school committee meeting, about what can we do as school committee members to support the work of our administrators, our teachers, our principals, so that we can do what students need us to do for them. And that they are our first priority. And specifically, were there things budgetary or policies or what have you that school committee could do? And I sort of was writing down some of Mariah's thoughts, like just cleaning, technology, like hiring people. What is it that the department needs from us or for us to advocate for in order to help support their work? So I want to sort of bring that back and bubble it up again. And I've heard a couple of people ask questions about hiring, and I wanted to follow up on the hiring specifically in the RLA, which has fallen behind all the other schools. And then there were concerns about, about whether or not the people who are going from schools into RLA, staff members, teachers, were leaving holes behind. And so I don't know if it could be very reasonable that those positions are collapsing because of the reduction in student enrollment in those schools and in those positions, and therefore those staff would go to RLA, or is it also the case that we need to replace some of those staff members inside the school buildings? And so I just think that it would be great to know where we are with staffing in the RLA and what other things we can advocate for. And so I would guess I would just, I know that Superintendent Marini is not here, but if staff are bringing back some of these questions and concerns to him, just to bring back up, what is it that we can do to support the district in getting the resources they need to do the work that needs to be done for kids?
So Jennifer, just a quick update there is RLA is actually fully staffed and began with their full staff today. That did leave holes, some holes at the K-8s. Principals were able to collapse sections, like you said, and then in some cases reassign staff, and then in some have to hire for some. In terms of support from the committee, I think I speak for all the principals to say that they need time to thoughtfully plan this out. If they were rushed, I think that we would see it, unfortunately, before the 20th, if that's the case. But I'm sure that the principals would be happy to come back on with Dr. Marini to explain why it is that they want until the 20th to put forth a model that they can stand behind.
Can I just, thank you, Casey. I am wondering, when we say that everyone is hired in RLA at this time, and I know that staff have been working really hard the last few days to fill those spots, and we're seeing more information coming in through the RLA, which is very helpful. Does that, so I know that, I can only speak for 6 through 8, and I'm sure it's everyone went to a full day for the first time today in RLA. World language is not part of that, but is anticipated to be online next week. So I'm just clarifying, are those educators hired as well and just have not begun their work because they're on board, but for lots of very good and reasonable reasons. Are they full though? Have we filled everything? I see Michelle nodding, so.
Yeah, I can talk to some of those because I was with the teachers today at RLA. So world language is staffed. We were working on the scheduling today. We do have 1 or 2 teachers who are leaving other positions to come and work with us. So they are going to be on a few day delay. I don't want to have you say like they're going to be there Tuesday morning because they are leaving other positions. And so we will have support for those classrooms or subject areas in order to make sure the students are receiving their instruction, but the staffing is in place.
And I will just say, I was very happy when the schedule came out to see conservatory and specialists incorporated with core academic subjects. So, I know that it's been a really big lift getting RLA up off the ground, and it was just really nice to see some school-wide community building experiences happening this morning across grade bands as a school community, and also to see this, teachers hired and schedules up, and so that was really exciting. So I just think that in a lot of things that still need to be done, this is something that, we've been working, people have been working a lot harder on this than I have, but people have been working on getting this up. And I know Meg Massini's been sort of leading that part, and we've got an administrator on hand now, I understand, to support her, and another supporting principal to help assist in that as well. So I just want to sort of highlight the progress that we are making as I continue to ask for questions about the things we still need to do.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Also,
Susan?
if you want, Jennifer, just touch a little bit on why more time. Obviously, principals can speak to it more clearly as they're creators of their schedule and they're in their buildings. But some of the things that we heard from them, as you all are well aware, in August we had meetings, weekly, sometimes multiple times a week, where we were changing our thoughts about what our reopening plan would look like. We even got an extension right from DESE. Because all school districts across Massachusetts were struggling with where we felt the best model for our students would be. And so once we settled on ours, principals only had a short amount of time to create their schedules. And the majority of those schedules were remote schedules for students in 1 through 8. And so now we're asking them to switch those schedules, which they just created, into this hybrid schedule. And there's a lot of complications around cohorting kids, making sure they're socially distanced, as I was saying earlier, having rooms assigned. A lot of rooms are being used for first to return students. And now if those grade levels are coming back, where to place those kids, thinking about teachers and them needing a good amount of time to think through what does it look like to go from fully remote with my classroom to teaching kids in person, and assigning them work to do at home, making sure those lessons are consistent. And so those are just a couple of things that principals have mentioned. Again, they would be able to speak much more clearly to it, but just so that you have some answer to the question that you asked.
Susan, did you want to jump in?
Thank you. This is more of a comment because I don't want to repeat what we've said earlier, just about not trying to answer questions for people who aren't here. I just want to note that it just feels like there is really a significant disconnect between what's happening. I think on the one hand, so much work is happening. So many central office, so many principals, so many teachers are working so hard. I'm getting emails from staff members at 2 a.m. for months now, literally months, since the end of July. And people are working every day, all day, Saturdays and Sundays this summer to get the buildings ready. I've gotten text messages from people driving to family crises probably 4 times, where they were in tears about a personal situation and yet still trying to make this work. And so I just think, and so many teachers are doing terrific work for a whole bunch of things they didn't sign up for. I think all of the questions that have been asked, like, I don't know, 95+% of the questions that were asked tonight, I think, are great questions. And they need answers, all of them. And so I don't disagree with any of that. And yet there are still so many questions swirling around, and there's so many nerves that are frayed. People who are home with kids all day long, they're seeing their kids suffer, they're seeing their kids not get what they feel like they need. I've got 3 kids, one of them as young as 8 all the way through the high school, and they're kind of all in different places. And so I guess my first thought is just to sort of ask for empathy and on all sides, all around, because just everyone is sort of working on their last nerve if they're not past that. So I think that's one. Just understanding sort of how everyone else needs, every single other person in this situation needs empathy, including you, whoever you are. I think the second thing is that because there are so many unanswered questions, people are kind of feeling a little bit disoriented and untethered. So what's happening is that people out in the world are having all these questions, and then people who are inside the PSB staff are saying, yep, we've got those questions too, we're on it. And you do have those questions, you are working on them, but I think somehow, and I think the school committee is sort of sitting in the middle of this, we kind of hear a lot of this and we try to funnel the questions and help to ask them, and we're kind of sitting in the middle. And I think maybe one thing that would be helpful, actually 2 things would be helpful. One is just to remind people that when we opened Upward Devotion a couple of years ago with a very experienced educational leader, we gave her an entire year unstaffed in order to hire her staff, hire her teachers, build her schedule, build her culture, work with parents, modify the curriculum, deal with transportation. She had a year. The other thing that we did is when we were talking about opening a 9th school at Baldwin or wherever else, we were budgeting it. We had budgeted that it was at least $1 million up to $1.5 million a year just to open a 9th elementary school. $1 million to $1.5 million just to open a 9th elementary school. Now, it's certainly true that there are custodial costs and secretarial costs and some building level things in there, but it sure isn't $1 million, right? And so what I guess I just want to say is that when I want to remind people that when we, and remind people, meaning everyone, including myself, I just kind of need to keep saying it to myself, we got guidelines from DESE at, less than 2 months ago about how to do this. And so when I put 2 months ago, and we didn't even get final, guidance until August, and we didn't get really good, solid special ed guidance until the middle of July. So, I think that people are really trying, and it isn't delivering the results that anyone wants. Everyone wants to be further ahead than we are. So I guess the reason I say that is because I think the one thing that the school committee can do, and it was noted earlier, is we can go advocate for resources. That's basically what we can do. I mean, we can tell you all this, you all know it. We can say it again, and but we don't run the schools, right? We're not the operating people. We're not the educational leaders. And frankly, if we were, it would be enormously inappropriate for us to get involved at that level. And so we can't build schedules. We can't do that. What we can do is say, okay, tell us what you need, tell us the budget that you need, tell us the staffing model, tell us the educational model, tell us what is needed to execute RLA and hybrid, and then we can go do the hard enough work, but with a lot of allies out there, go advocate for additional resources. And that is not a bottomless well. We keep getting told that. I'm on calls every week with people on the town side who are like, okay, be careful, because they know an ask is coming. They know the bill's coming. And I think they're just concerned that it's going to be so high. But the problem is that as school committee, we're kind of sitting in the middle of this seesaw, and we can't quite get enough information to get the additional money and get the additional resources that we need in order to solve a bunch of these problems, because we don't have them right now. And so that's why we're getting text messages or emails at 2 o'clock in the morning and text messages on the way to, really heartbreaking situations for people. So all of this is to say that we've now had a few finance meetings where, Mary Ellen and her staff are doing their very, very best to kind of pull in, what are the staffing needs? What are the different models? Because if you think about it, we know how to run a building, right? You need a principal, you need a vice principal, you need a secretary or administrative assistant, you need one teacher for every 20 to 25 kids, you need 2 guidance counselors. We know we need a nurse, you need all these things. And the problem is that we don't quite know either in RLA or in hybrid, exactly what we need to make all these things work. So I think there's a lot of traction on things like what do we need on the building side? And I feel like Matt Gillis and Panel 4 and Dave have done an incredible job sort of pulling together and trying to get that to happen. I think the educational side is, I won't say it's harder because the health and safety stuff is hard too, but it's a different kind of complexity to try to figure out what is the staffing model that we need, what are the schedules that we need, and then how will these work for kids across lots and lots of different needs and situations. And every time the Wi-Fi goes out, someone will email the superintendent. And it's sort of like, okay, well, the superintendent can't actually fix Wi-Fi in Brookline, but he still gets those emails because there's an expectation that the district, and it's not even a crazy expectation, but like that the district will make this work somehow for all of our kids. So I guess my plea not was A, for empathy for everyone, and B, figuring out a way to get from the budget managers as quickly as possible their best guess as to what the staffing needs are and what those different elements are in terms of the technology needs, in terms of the additional people, because we know that when we do this, we're making essentially smaller groups. It's a much less efficient model than everybody being in one building. So when it's a less efficient model, you need more people to do it. And so I think we all understand that intuitively, but because we don't have sort of okay, here's the 4-page document that says, here's what we need, it's hard for us to then go advocate to the town, to town meeting, and to all these other entities to get some more staff. So I'm going to stop now because I'm not sure I'm adding a lot, except to say, like, I think that is where we can be helpful. And I want to acknowledge all of the really good questions that have gotten asked. And I think the sooner we can sort of maybe capture the questions in a way that says, like, we know there are all these questions out there and here's where we are on them, I think that'll be really, really helpful on the technology dimension, on the special education dimension, on each of the dimensions that we've heard, because I think then people will say, okay, I understand. They heard my question. This is what's been done so far. This is what has to happen next. And this is how much it's going to cost. So that might just give people sort of more, I don't know, just sort of the shoulders might drop a little bit if we can kind of see those glide paths and a way to kind of get those additional resources. So I'll stop here, but and I know we are going to talk about budget a little bit later today, but I know even we don't have all the answers later today. So I think that would be my request.
Yeah, thank you, Susan. Thank you for your words. Helen.
So I'm not going to repeat anything that my colleagues said because you've all said it and said it quite well. I will just repeat the one piece about my disappointment on the start date. I really thought that we were going to be able to do it much sooner. My question, though, is, and which was raised by what Erin said about the first to return classes and when we go to hybrid. My assumption was, and it may be incorrect, that those kids would go straight into the classrooms with their the regular classrooms. And so those classes would then be available. No?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that, Helen. So it depends on what grade levels the first to return students are mixed with, meaning if there's a first to return cohort of 6 through 8 students in a 2nd grade classroom, for example, and 6th to 8th grade students are still learning at home and they're not in the hybrid model yet, but the 2nd graders need to come in, we need to find a new space for those first to return students.
But there would be those spaces anyways, because they're not there. The kids aren't there.
The 2nd graders would need to replace them in their classroom that they're currently using.
2nd graders would go into their classroom. The 6th to 7th graders would go to the 6th, 7th, and 8th classrooms.
Presumably they would be there right now if there was space for them. I mean, again, a principal knows much more about their building and where they've assigned spaces, but
maybe we're meeting again next week. This is not something that's going to end today. We're going to, and I would suggest even Matt's report tomorrow, if people want to tune into the Capital Subcommittee, we're going to be discussing the ventilation issues and the tents and where things are at. So I think that might be a better place to deal with that. But it would be helpful to understand, what happens to first to return kids? What are the, the roadblocks, if there are any, but or what they might be. And also, I guess one question that keeps on getting to me is our class sizes presently are very small for in-person, for coming back, for hybrid, compared to what they usually are. They're in the range of 13 to 17, I think I was looking at. Probably the biggest classes were 17. How can we, is there any way, and I keep on pushing on this, and I know you guys have heard me push on it, to bring back kids, in those classrooms that, or those grades that are particularly small, that could come back full time, and therefore we would only need the one teacher who's teaching with the paraprofessional, maybe if you need that to help them keep the distancing. I think we need to look at some of that, or I need to understand better why we can't, I guess is my question, but not for today, to come back to it.
I think that's on our schedule for tomorrow, Helen, with Megan.
I do know Megan has been working on, similar to the K numbers that you saw, she's been working on that for other grades.
Yeah, she was going to report that to us tomorrow.
Okay, great.
What, at Capital, Mariah?
Yes, at Capital. We asked, I think she said she was going to start with first and second grade tomorrow, but yes, it was going to be the same sort of mapping of kids in classes to the expected classroom to see how that would fit.
Okay, great. David.
Yes, just on this last point, it really would be great if we could get first grade and second grade back on a full-time basis as well. So I look forward to that conversation tomorrow. Going back to the RLA staffing, so it's fully staffed now, but was that by pulling people out of the buildings? Because that might create more holes, or how was that done exactly?
Michelle, if you can speak to that.
Yeah, all I was going to speak to is that there were teachers that identified that they wanted a remote assignment for the year, and that group of teachers did pull from the buildings, and we simultaneously tried to fill multiple positions as teachers were coming over. Some positions didn't need to be filled because they were collapsed. But then we also did hire a number of teachers from the outside, and that was sort of why I was saying that a few people are still coming on board because they needed to provide a certain amount of notice to the current school district that they are working for, and they will take a little bit of time to come in. And so it was a mix.
And by a little bit of time, roughly, what are we talking? Do you think by October? Or
I'm hoping next week. Like that's what we're working with. It's just working with other districts to make sure that we are not, some contracts say you need to stay so many days. And so teachers are just working to get out of their contracts. And it is not a lot of them at this point. Many people have already come over and many people are already starting.
I'd also like to revisit a point that Mariah raised at the beginning about the plus part of Remote Plus. Jennifer mentioned it as well. I think that one of the reasons we hear so much concern in public comment and elsewhere from parents in particular is that the plus part really hasn't been that robust, and it seems to be quite variable, where I'm hearing that at some schools, students are receiving that plus element, at other schools less so. It even varies by grade, it even varies by class. So I think if we could have a little bit more standardization there, at least some kind of minimum for everybody, so that every single grade, every single class is actually having a regular plus component, that would accomplish a lot to alleviate some of these concerns that we are hearing. It might even soften somewhat the pressure to hoping we can start as soon as possible. But if parents saw that their students, that their children were able to have that in-person component on a regular basis now, then I think that there would be a lot more contentment, understanding, and patience to see the full array of programmatic offerings develop at a pace that the principals can handle. But right now, I'm worried that that trust level is not there because we're not even seeing the plus part, which school committee and I think some educators as well, and many of us have, including administrators, have been saying we thought it was important. So I hope that we can make some improvements there.
Anyone else want to make a comment that hasn't had a chance to do so yet? Okay, not seeing anything. I guess I would just say a couple of things. I also agree. I would love to see some plus activities. I would like to see them reported on, perhaps, just so we have a sense of what's going on. We did say we really believe in it. We want to see it. I'm hoping that our Q&A section is up and running on the website, and so people, you know, as we get questions, we got many tonight, and as we get answers, that we can post them. And that will help people understand exactly where we are. I heard a lot of people say tonight that sooner rather than later, if we can bring the children in, if the 20th is the best we can do, but if we can do better than that, sooner than that, that would be well received by most everybody. I would like the public to know that there are a number of us on the negotiations committee, and we are meeting hour upon hour with the teachers union, and we are making some progress. It's a lot to talk about, a lot of details, a lot to get through, but we are meeting regularly, and we are making some progress on an MOU. So I want people to know that, because it's a lot of hard work, and we're doing it, and the union's doing it with us. So we're doing it together, and we hope to have more public information to share down the road, shortly down the road. But I do want you to know that. If there are no other comments, Mariah, you want the last word?
Well, are we going to get a second round of comments or no?
If you want,
Yeah.
otherwise we'll move on because we have a lot more to cover tonight. So you want to say something?
We also have another half hour, don't we, in this section? Weren't we going until 8:30?
No, yeah, but we have all a food service update to do, which is fairly lengthy.
So is food service update happening? Because I had questions about food service.
Yes, food service update's happening. Sasha's here.
No, I know she's here, but I wasn't sure if it was a separate. Okay, so I will put aside that question for now. I just wanted to say a couple of things in response. The first, to return, my hope is that they are going to come back full time, and that if they need to bridge cohorts, they will. The idea that the kids who we've identified as really needing to come back would be anything less than full time, would be, or at least covering both cohorts. If we're in a 2-day on, 2-day off model, they should be there 4 days at least, if not the 5. So that's something I want to articulate, a very strong feeling and sentiment in favor of that. And then I just want to, one big comment, which is, maybe this is incorrect, but I feel like I'm hearing also, we're hearing mixed messages, because we're hearing that Michelle just said that people weren't pulled out of the buildings, but we've been getting a lot of emails, not like that there have been holes still in the buildings, right? That the buildings now have staffing holes. And I guess I want to make sure that we're hearing, Susan talked a lot about it, empathy. And yes, I want to be empathetic, but I also don't want to have to be empathetic, because I want to give people the resources that they need, so that I don't have to be empathetic because they don't need empathy. They're feeling supported in what they've got, right? Actual empathy, and $1 will buy you a cup of coffee. You know what I mean? We need to give them those resources. And so, if there are holes in the building, I just want to, if there, when we did hear about these involuntary staffing moves to RLA or to wherever else they need to be, and if there's those gaps, tell us, so we can just tell us what we need. I really hope that we don't get a gloss, but that we actually hear this real facts of what we need, so that we can do the work that Susan talked about getting the resources as soon as possible.
Yeah, Barbara, did you want to respond?
Yes, I'm curious about the pulling people out of the buildings. What I think I heard, I can't remember who said it, whoever was talking about the Remote Learning Academy, is that the Remote Learning Academy was staffed by people who did not want to be in the regular school for health reasons or for whatever reasons. I don't consider that being pulled out of the building. They have chosen to leave. However, my question is, are there people who are being moved who do not choose to move?
I can answer that, Barbara. So just to clarify, Mariah, also, so RLA, I guess I should just give the full background. RLA was first staff who indicated that they could not come back in person. So that was one. And then through a series of surveys and reaching out to staff, we identified more staff who voluntarily went to RLA to teach remotely for the year. Then we began hiring also externally. We had the posting go out to look for folks outside of PSB. And then there were a few, I think, Suzanne, you just mentioned it. There are a number of staff who we have involuntarily transferred, and it depends on the case as to why staff were pulled to teach in the RLA. In some cases, their caseloads were small enough where it could be equally distributed amongst their counterparts and other grades at the same school without creating a hole in that home school, if you will. In some cases, the need was higher at RLA than the K-8, and they didn't have as many responsibilities. I don't know all the individual cases. So RLA was staffed by a number of ways, I should say. And where there are holes, I can't confidently say that we have no holes at all because of RLA, but that some of those holes are filled by collapsing sections, reassigning caseloads, and then postings are out for principals to hire outside of PSB.
May I ask a follow-up here? What happens if, when the period comes that people can move their children back into the remote learning academy, and we end up with that being significantly smaller, and then we have staff whose jobs are no longer available there, but we also have no place for them in the public schools? How are we going to deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, that's with a lot of forethought and planning. So it's certainly on our agendas now when we meet with our interim HR director, thinking through, because I think we will see a number of shifts to and from the RLA, which of course, not just the students moving, but potentially staff too.
Yeah, it would be, I think it's really hard to be moved when you don't really want to be doing it, although people will agree to it. I think as I'm sure you're doing as much as possible, that's something I would really avoid.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it gets complicated, Barbara, because we have actually 700 fewer students than we did a year ago. So that's a lot of staff. And so somehow we have to figure out, you know, are the staff where they can be most helpful and where it makes sense for them to be. How much moving around can we do and how much can we avoid? And then what are the future needs going to be? So these are really tough questions that I don't think we have the answers to yet.
I understand that. I realize they're tough questions, yeah. But I just think we need, as it seems you are doing, to think about these things in advance, because in some cases you can see this coming. And in many ways, it would be a good thing to have it come if more people could actually end up being back in their own school as opposed to remote academy. I just need to be cognizant of the difficulties that could cause.
Yeah, thank you. Andy?
Yeah, I mean, while we're on the subject of staffing, I would really like to go back to the paraprofessionals and building substitutes, because I think my impression is that we are not having great difficulty recruiting sort of the teachers that we need, but we are having problems recruiting paraprofessionals and building subs, and those are going to be absolutely crucial to make the hybrid model work. And I don't know what we can do to make the Brookline Public Schools more attractive for them, or what we can do to recruit more widely or more aggressively. But I mean, this is a foreseeable train wreck if we don't get enough of them by the time we feel ready to, or by the time we want to bring way more kids back into the buildings. So, I don't have the answer to that, but I feel like it's one of those things we really need to address now.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Mariah.
Just one comment that, many places with workers like supermarkets and other places have added pay differentials on. And maybe that's something that needs to be considered as an option if it hasn't been already.
Yeah,
but I
think
agree with
really,
Andy.
We need to think creatively.
Yeah.
I mean, if we can foresee right now that we don't have enough paraprofessionals and substitutes even for what's happening now, then it's sure as heck is going to be a problem in mid-October. So.
Yeah, I mean, and if this is what makes us or breaks us, it needs to happen.
I mean, I'm feeling right now the way I felt about HEPA filters a month ago, right? Or 6 weeks ago. Like, if we don't get on this now, we can't open school.
Okay, thank you to everybody. So we are going to shift. We're going to go to the food services update. So Mary Ellen and Sasha, are you going to do that for us?
Sure. It's my pleasure to introduce Sasha Palmer, our Director of Food Service. I think this might be one of the first times she's in front of the committee. She was in front of Finance Subcommittee last week, giving us an overview where kind of those shifting sands that have been happening in food service all summer. And she's got some updates for you to give, and she knows that it's going to be a short presentation. You have her slides, you have her memo, so she's just going to hit the high points for you. And a lot of the information and detail is in her slides and memo, which hopefully went from the Finance Subcommittee packet to this packet. So with that, Sasha, do you need to share your screen?
Yes, I do. Thanks.
So if Robin can, great.
Can everyone see my slides?
Yes.
Thank you for having me. It is indeed my first time in front of the committee. So food service started, well, we didn't stop actually. We have been serving meals to families since the closure. And now since school reopened, we have continued. This continuation is made possible through a national waiver from the USDA, which we are happy to be a part of. And it's the only time Brookline has never or would never qualify to be a part of this, to serve meal in this manner, serve universally free meals in this manner, had it not been for those waivers. So we are excited and happy that we are able to serve universally free meals, breakfast and lunch, to all kids in the district, regardless of their meal status. So it doesn't matter if you applied or have participated in free and reduced meals, you are able to participate through this waiver. Now, this waiver extends until December 31st. Myself and a number of other directors in the district, as well as other external groups are trying to ask the USDA to extend this benefit through the rest of the school year. I've been sending out communication for people to speak to their representative to have this extended because of the ability for district like ours to serve universally free meals. And before I continue, I want to say thanks to the school committee, because before this extension was granted, we were, the school committee committed to us in continuing to serve this in this manner, serving meals to all families. They committed financially to granting us that support, which we really need in order to continue serving through the closure since March. And since then, at the end of, just before school began, we've served over 50,000 meals to families. That is an achievement. I didn't expect us to be serving that much, but I'm happy that we are able to meet those needs. So thank you. Now, the benefit of having universally free meal is we only benefit, or we do our best when we have participation. The more participation we have, the more federal fund that comes into our system, the more it gives the food services the ability to create those great menus and provide nourishing foods to all the kids that participate. I must reiterate that all meals are free. Meals are free to all families, regardless of your meal status, regardless of whether or not you participated before. This is the year to participate. You are indeed helping the food service department to bring in those federal funds in order for us to continue to provide the services that we have been providing. We've created a number of ways for families to participate based on the reopening plan that the district has adopted. So for in-classroom meal services, we have provided meal pickups or drop-offs to their classroom. And this is done through online ordering, and I'll talk more about that shortly. For every student who are learning or at home or staying at home, those remote learners, we also have a way for them to access these meals. They can go to one of the remote pickup sites, which is at the Peer School or the Brookline High School, or they can participate through our mobile service, which is literally a mobile van driving meals around to a number of facilities. We've partnered with the Brookline Housing Authority, which has a few of those mobile drop-off sites. And as the district goes on to learning hybrid, we'll develop or continue to serve those students who are coming in classroom and learning at home part-time. We'll have what is called take-home meals for them, which they can take home at the end of their 2 days to cover those days when they're not, or when they're learning remotely. Now, how do families participate? We ask that all in-service families participate by ordering online. And we do that because it helps us to control the number of meals and give students access to these meals, because these meals are served in their classroom. It makes it easier for us to know where the kids are, since it's not the typical classroom setting that we are used to. So we ask them to order, go online to order.link.com and create an account and order online. For fully remote pickup, as I said, there are a number of locations, and these locations are available on our website. There are multiple delivery days you can participate. You can go to one of our sites or access the mobile meals on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. There is this great opportunity for us too in food service, due to the waiver, to provide meals on the weekends. This is the first year that we are allowed to provide weekend meals. And so we do give families the opportunity to pick up on Friday meals to cover weekend days. And these pickups are not limited to students only. This waiver allows parents to drive by and pick up for their kids, which is not something that is usually offered during the National School Lunch regular meal service. Here are some of the pickup locations. We have the Brookline High School and the Peer School, which operates after hours. The time is actually 5 to 6 p.m. We've done that because we got feedback from our families that that time works for them. The mobile site goes a little earlier so that students who are participating in remote learning can access the meal right after those classes are finished. I want to thank our community partners who have really been the ones who have helped us to connect with these families who need this service. So the Brookline Housing Authority, as I said, we have a number of stops at the Brookline Housing Authority. We have partnered with them throughout the summer. We've had kickoff sessions, which they bring families out to us, we feed them. They offer goodies like back to school backpacking during that or delivery time, which makes it almost like a community event. The food pantry, who is going to be collaborating with us to provide Thrives bags at the end of the week for families to take home. And as usual, Steps to Success, who is always connecting us to families who are using our services. Mothers Out Front, who has provided our design our logos or drive-by mobile site that we put on our van, and the Brookline Safety Net. We really appreciate it. Without those collaboration, we wouldn't have been able to connect with those families, go into those places, connect with those families, and provide that service safely to families who were not able to walk or drive out to one of our schools, which we were operating as our drop-off site or pickup sites. And that is it that I have so far. I know people may have some questions.
You can stop sharing.
Thank you.
If people have questions.
Thank you, Sasha.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sasha.
I do want to give sort of a short financial update from the Finance Subcommittee. So we are trying to close a $48,000 projected budget gap. And we're probably in executive session, you'll get an update on where we are with the labor. And I really want to extend to the food service team and the crew there that those that have, there are 7 employees that have been working since March, 3 or 4 others that have kind of popped in and sort of helped out a little bit. But they really have dedicated themselves to supporting our families, and really do appreciate that school committee has, you know, had the vision and mission to provide families meals all through the summer, including the 10-day period where we weren't actually in session. Also, we didn't, the staff didn't miss a beat. And, you know, we have, so I want to acknowledge our employees and the support that they've given our families, and really the partnerships that we've had with our community groups. So we, you know, we are gonna, there's some, potentially some CARES Act funds that might finish that gap, small gap. And then again, once December comes around, if we are not continuing the free meals, moving people back to paying for meals and a la carte, that's, we'll probably have another presentation for you in early December around what's next for January and how the program will look then. So just want to add that at the end.
Questions, comments from people? Yeah, Mariah?
You know, I always have questions.
Look forward to them, Mariah.
So I missed the end of finance, and so I apologize for this, but could you just explain when we say it's free, is the district losing money per meal or actually breaking even per meal?
We're losing money per meal. I guess that's safe. We have a deficit. We're roughly about $48,000 deficit based on the meals that we're serving. So the participation, I think as Sasha said, where we're able to give free meals to all students. The more meals we're able to give, the higher the reimbursement, and then our gap gets smaller. Is that right, Sasha?
Yes, it is. It is.
So
Federal government reimburses us for each meal, each free meal that we serve.
So basically, if I could just understand this right, the staffing is what sets us into the red, but the meals, if we have a volume of enough meals, each meal reimbursement helps reduce the staffing. Is that the accurate way to describe that?
It's meals per labor hour. So the more meals per labor hour that you can serve, the better your the gap of the delta of cost closes.
So really I'm just trying to think of the message to go to families, and the message to go to families is it's not just free to you, it helps the district recover costs. correct?
It helps the district not have to fund a deficit.
Right, so
the-
so it's recovering funds that would otherwise be a deficit. Okay. And then we heard some comments that there's been some like issues with ordering and also what's going on like with actual delivery of meals in schools. And I was wondering if we could have an update on if that's getting sorted out.
We have, I must say this software was, Brookline was the one who actually created this software with our developers. We were the one who pioneered this software. When we realized that we would have to be serving meals, or we would be serving meals in this way, we started out in creating an online ordering for families to order. And this software is developed and from that concept. Now a number of other schools in the district in Massachusetts have followed suit and is using this software. We did have some challenges in the beginning because it's a new software and because our students are not, it's designed for regular in classroom where the students were back and not in rooms here, rooms there, combined groups, and so on. So what would happen if a student ordered, they could select their classroom based on the roster or where they were. That wasn't happening because we had to adjust the position and which group is in this room, which group is in that room. So parents weren't able to see the specific grades that their students were in popping up on the online ordering for us to send the meals to those sites. Some were having issues seeing the menus. We have to be, we worked with our developer to correct that problem. That has been corrected. I sent out an email to families yesterday with specific instruction and a video on how to online order because it is a new system and it is different from the usual. That online ordering instruction with pictures and videos is available on our website for families to follow. I've had a few comments. They have been getting better. Families are able to see the menu. They're able to set up an account, go online and pre-order. So as of today, that is up and running. If families are having issues, we ask them to email us or call us directly so we can help them walk through the process.
Okay. And just my last comment is that I actually have logged in and created accounts for my kids. And that was super easy once because you just have to find the ID, but yes. It's really hard. I don't understand how to actually, like there's meals for every day, but then how that corresponds to picking them up 3 times a week is very unclear. Because like I can log in tonight and order lunch for this morning or lunch for tomorrow morning, but am I picking those up tomorrow night? Or is that like, it's just not like the bunching exactly because of your point of this, it's not very clear. So
I want to add, the online ordering is for in-person learning. So if you are picking up remotely, you do not need to order online at this time. You just walk up to the pickup location, grab the package that's available and go.
Oh.
So I would encourage remote learners at this time to not pre-order and allow, because we are getting the system up and running and we want to make sure that every classroom is getting their meals on time and every single item that is offered is delivered to the correct location. It is easy for remote learners to drive up to one of our facilities or walk out to the vehicle and make their selection based on what is available and what the menu is online. But the in-classroom order is mainly now, and we will extend it to remote later on as soon as we fix all and understand where what these families need and have more staffing to create a better process. We ask only online in-person learners to pre-order.
Thank you.
I will just comment that last year, before the pandemic, the wellness group was spending a fair amount of time doing marketing and educating so that people knew about, it wasn't all free then, but just that we even offer breakfast because our participation rate at that time was very low. But I will I will say that from my experience, when I had a school, when it's universally free and it's readily available, the children do eat if they're at school because their friends are eating and everybody's eating. So it's a fabulous program. And I imagine your participation rate will go up as the kids come to the schools. But again, the kind of the PR and the information for people, the education piece seems to be important as well. But thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Now, do we have to vote, Mary Ellen? Oh, I'm sorry, Sasha.
No, no, there's no vote.
Okay.
We, thanks to Robin, found that the meal charge policy had been passed and we just need to, that had been an open question, and no, there's no vote that needs to go forward at this point.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, concerns? No, otherwise we'll let Sasha go home. Jennifer.
Just a quick comment. I just wanted to highlight something that Sasha already said, and I thank you for this, about if families are having difficulty to reach directly out to the food services department instead of the educators themselves, just so that families can get answers faster and food service can get their information. And there's not, what I envision is sort of like a bit possible delay in getting the information that they need, just because it's going to pass through more people. So I really just wanted to encourage families who are having difficulty to reach out to food services to do that. And to thank you for being responsive to the feedback from families and the students about their needs in selecting meals on site. And I look forward to our remote students being able to have that level of specificity as possible and feasible in the future. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other hands, I will say thank you. Good night. You're welcome to stay, Sasha, but you absolutely are under no obligation to stay with us any longer.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Mary Ellen and Susan, we're moving on to budget status for 2021. You are on.
All right. Included late in the afternoon or early evening, you had two memos that arrived in your packet. And one is the main memo, which is the FY21 budget update and for Q1, which hasn't quite finished. We still got a week or two to go. And then a supplemental document, which is the outside funding in a different format than I presented before. That will be updated as we go along this year. But this, the story of our budget this year for 21 is really one of trials, tribulations, successes. We had started in June where we had some significant budget reductions we had to make. We made cuts out of central office. We cut $900,000 out of our contracted services. We cut $300,000 out of our other services, which is travel and meals and other sort of professional development expenses. $25,000 out of our equipment lines, and we also cut about $455,000 out of our intramurals, athletics, and student supports, activities, clubs, in order to balance and land our budget to reach a 1.3% increase when we had been enjoying 4 and 5, 6% increases over the last 5 years. So we started with a budget in stress, and now we're continuing a budget in stress. But I guess the encouraging part is that from an operations standpoint and our operations costs in terms of PPE and HEPA filters and some of the HVAC, the money showed up to fund those extra expenses. Where our challenges are right now is around staffing and funding for staffing. So right now I'm looking at, I basically have a low, mid, and a high range estimate of where we could land, depending on how the RLA staff lands, how we've had to backfill some staff, how that lands, for how long certain vacancies are kept open and provide us some resources there. To be somewhere between $1.5 million to $5 million. And right now I'm kind of sitting at about 2.5 million. And what has happened is that's the midpoint at this point. Our high point was around 50, needing about 55 additional staff. That was early on. We did, the principals and the curriculum coordinators really rallied together and did some classroom consolidations, really looked at positions about what we need to fill for remote and remote learning, and do we need all the positions? And so some vacancies went unfilled. And we were able to, it looked like we might be able to get that down to about only needing about 20 additional positions, but we've now kind of creeped back up to roughly about 30 additional positions that we will need in terms of our FTEs. And we're still reconciling our vacancies and making sure that do we need all of our para vacancies filled? If we do, how many? To the point of Andy earlier is the making sure that we do some creative and heavy recruiting to be able to get those positions filled as quickly as possible. So opening in a pandemic has been rather daunting and costly from a financial standpoint. And we're working, everybody's still working on being able to balance those accounts out. I think one of the pieces as we go forward looking at, as we enter into October in the second quarter of the fiscal year, one of the new pieces of information that I got today is that while we were expecting and anticipating that circuit breaker was going to come in anywhere between $400,000 and $800,000 greater than our FY20 allocation, since the legislature hasn't passed their budget, I got a word today to potentially anticipate that circuit breaker would be level funded. That is going to be a challenge for us. While I haven't necessarily worked in that circuit breaker funds as any part of my estimate, it was a safety net, and I was viewing it as a safety net for special education, in particular because we have so many unknowns as we are traveling in this world of pandemic and remote learning, first in school learning, hybrid learning, and all-in learning. So that is concerning news for me today to share with you, because that was actually something I was really kind of figuring it would come down, particularly because our costs last year increased. So that is, and the other piece that's also looming for us is we have negotiations that are happening or need to begin to happen. Our BEU contracts their salary increases went through August 2019. Food service custodians and BISA, their contracts all end on June 30th, 21. So we also have labor negotiations we need to work with our staff and going forward. And what does that look like for fiscal year 22? Is there any movement, or what are we going to be negotiating, if anything, for FY21? So those are sort of two larger news items that have emerged today from my last two reports that I have provided. So that's really where we are. There's town school partnership. I don't know if there's another meeting scheduled. I know there's interest to have one scheduled soon. We need to land, I know people are waiting for the school department to sort of land what our request is going to be. And so at this point, it's almost, I appreciate that the hybrid opening isn't until October 20th, because it will allow us to actually settle a little bit of our budget, settle some staff settle the budget down from adds, move, changes, transfers, hiring. And then actually really sit down and be able to figure out what is the hybrid model going to cost? What's the staff that we need? Is there additional staff we need or not? Do we need to increase or decrease work schedules? And what are the changes that need to be made, and be able to be proactive in what that funding looks like? So with that, that's my update. I can go into the outside funding if you'd like, on a sort of after we deal with the operating budget.
Thanks, Mary Ellen. Helen?
Yeah, I have a quick question. So I'm trying to remember how the process is because we've never really gone back for more money in the past from town meeting. What is there a drop dead date that we have to know how much? Or can we even go up to the week before to be able to say, you know, so that we can get better numbers to them?
They would appreciate a ballpark number, and then the generally you can actually go up to the minute of town meeting floor in the motion, as long as you have a balanced budget, you know, your revenue expenses balance. So the town, the reserve fund has an extra $2 million in it from, they already pre-planned that. So that could be reappropriated. There's $1 million identified as part of town school partnership that has new revenue. Again, but the legislature hasn't voted their budget, so we're still dealing with Chapter 70 estimates and other cherry sheet estimates. So that is, so roughly there's probably maybe in terms of, if you did a town school split, in terms of what the town needs, there's probably $1.5 million to $2 million, maybe that, but it's in two buckets. One is a reserve fund and one is additional revenue available for appropriation.
And we don't know anything from the legislature about when they're going to do a real budget. Are they going to continue throughout the year on a 1/12 budget that then basically is a level funded budget, I assume, right?
Yeah, I don't, I think it's all level. The message I got today was level funded. So that means, circuit breaker being level funded is very sobering.
And we assumed that money in our budget, or we did not?
We did. Our practice is to budget for what we received in the prior year.
Oh, okay.
And generally in the last few years, we get anywhere from $80,000 to $100,000 more. Once the filing is done, and Linda Kirby and Casey No Miller's department mines for dollars and does a phenomenal job submitting the claim. But this year what they did is they changed the circuit breaker rules to allow for transportation. So with transportation added and some additional tuition costs, that was translating to between $400,000 and $800,000 increase, and that would have been incredibly helpful for both 21 and 22.
At the 75% reimbursement.
Well, this 400,000 was 60% reimbursement. So even if they didn't fund it, like we were still making out at 60%, and 75 was the 800,000.
Okay, thank you. I can try and, as government chair, I can try and follow up with the office to see where things are at.
Yeah, thank you, Helen. Susan?
Thank you. I just wanted to add on to Mary Ellen's answer. I think Mary Ellen's answer is technically correct. I also believe that if we are not able to make a case for the additional money we need in plenty of time before town meeting, it's going to be really problematic. So as Mary Ellen said, if we're in a situation where we're asking for, pick a number, $2 million, and it comes in at 1.99, no one's going to care. But what we can't do is come in with as wide a range as we still have now. We need time to work with the town advisory committee, with all of the different groups in town and town meeting members, and educate them about exactly why these costs are going up. Because I think to the extent that the narrative in people's heads is that there are a lot of services that aren't getting delivered, and not understanding why we, you know, where are these funds going, I think we're not going to get a lot of traction. So I guess what I would say is that I know it's a challenging process to get from the budget managers what their needs are for the first half of the FY21 year, but and I hate to sound like a broken record. I know I've said this in every single meeting since probably April, Mary Ellen, but we need people's best guesses as to what the staffing model is going to be, because otherwise we're still sort of shooting darts at balloons. And I think we need to be able to explain why this is different from what we normally do. So if we normally staff like X, and given remote, we have to staff like Y, and therefore we need Z more people. I think people need a very simple, like they don't need pages and pages of spreadsheets, although some people do. Most people just need to understand, like, why is this going up and what are you doing with those extra people? And I think the teachers have been incredibly eloquent about, you know, this evening and at other points about what the issues are in their buildings, what the staffing issues are. But unless we have a way to kind of aggregate that all together, we're not going to be able to make a case for additional funds. So I guess my question is, given that we're now sort of towards the end of September, you know, normally the advisory committee process has sort of started because the warrant closed. What is, in your mind, what are the most important pieces that have to land, and what do we need to do to help encourage them to land, get them to land, such that we can have the discussion we need so that we can go have an ask that has, you know, that is justified and validated and sort of kind of goes across all the different, you know, concerns that we've heard that are, you know, again, many they just have to get answered. So as we sit here in the middle at the end of September, what is our glide path to do that?
So as you heard this evening, the RLA is fully staffed. So that landing that this week is helpful. My midpoint, which makes my midpoint a little bit closer to accurate in terms of adding, which is around the 2.5 million, hopefully net around 2.5 million, because we've added we've added 16 positions with the RLA. We've added 9 with kindergarten, and we've added another 12 to backfilling positions and specialists, backfilling that. We've had to add 3 to special education, and we've had 1 additional position at the high school. So those are roughly around the 30 positions that we've had to add to fill in the RLA, which is a 9th elementary school. And then we also have this distancing. So one of the pieces that we don't get the benefit of when you add a 9th school. Typically you do student reassignment and you shuffle all your staff and you have some efficiency around that. And you might still be adding staff, but you're not adding a whole cohort of staff. With the 9th elementary school of the RLA and distancing considerations, we've had to expand our sections. So having that all sort of get nailed down of how many sections we're really adding, how many specialists do we need to add, that's just finally landing this week. And so I'll be able to finish and finalize and get a closer number probably by the end of next week. And then be able to shift to what are the changes that are going to be happening with hybrid, and how is hybrid going to impact staffing? And is there another cohort, another piece that needs to get added to our request that has to do specifically with hybrid? So that's where we're at this week, more specifically to your question.
Yeah, I guess I would sort of put a few specific things on the radar, and I think this is probably something that I would hope the chair and the vice chair do with the superintendent, or I guess maybe we can do it in finance, but Normally it happens sort of at a leadership level, but just to sort of summarize all the things we've heard, things like the technology issues that we, that need to get addressed, and bandwidth in the buildings, especially if we're going to be having more people in the buildings, transfers out of the buildings into the RLA model, backfilling those. So some of which you've mentioned, but I think there's still more that I understand that's still out there that's probably needed. I mean, I think the hybrid, the kindergarten piece, I think has raised in a lot of people's minds a question of, well, wait a minute, if we needed 9 more people in kindergarten, if we put first grade in, are we going to need 9 more people in first grade? And if we put second grade in, are we going to need 9 more people in second grade? And so I think the hybrid thing can't wait until some later point in time. I think the sooner we can kind of say, here's how we're going to be allocating people, then through, kind of over the course of the first half of the year anyway, I think that'll be really important and helpful. And again, all this is aside collective bargaining. I'm just still back on what is required to kind of address, in the different areas, special education, paras, all the different pieces that we've talked about. Some of them are truly operational issues like hiring and, and getting positions that are posted and funded actually filled. That's not really something that we do. We don't intervene a lot in, although if we have to, we'll be happy. We'll try to do that too. But I still feel like we don't have a clear handle on what is needed. And so for that reason, it makes me a little nervous to kind of say, yeah, we're pretty sure about 2.5. So either I need more information, or somehow we're going to have to kind of bring the different pieces together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is we've been chasing a moving target for a long time, and it's finally about to land, with RLA finally fully sectioned out, staffed, and identified, and positions identified. So that's this week. So every week is new information. So hopefully next week's report I'll be doing with much more definitive information, and be able to finish out getting to the why the increase and why the need, because it'll actually stay still.
Yeah, no, I appreciate all of that. I think what we need though is we need a way to address the issues that have been coming up multiple times across multiple buildings and families. And I think if we put forward a budget that doesn't address those things, it's going to be really, really hard to explain to people. And I think I appreciate that information is coming in week by week, and that's absolutely right. At the same time, we really, and I know we've been talking about this since April, so every 2 weeks since April, but we really need a way to be able to project costs for the hybrid model and what we're going to need for that, because town meeting is in November and then it's not again until May. And so I really can't emphasize enough the work that has to happen with the budget managers to be able to project what we're going to need for the hybrid model before not on the week by week level.
Right.
But Susan, so this also needs to be kind of across departments or across subcommittees, because Helen, in Capital, you're going to look at classroom needs according to enrollment. So that certainly will have a strong bearing on what the staffing is. So it seems like we have to do it both in Capital and Finance in terms of what are our staffing needs.
I think that was a jump.
Okay.
Capital doesn't really do classroom need. I mean, it does in terms of the HEPA filters, in terms of all those things.
Yeah, no, I know that, but who takes the
teachers? We will get an enrollment report, because I've asked for that, because it helps to just sort of see the bigger picture. But I don't think that, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I'm not understanding what you're saying.
No, I could be mistaken. I'm just wondering where that work takes place.
What work?
Well, the work that says what are the staffing needs based on enrollment.
So that would be curriculum, wouldn't it?
No.
Well, I think normally what happens is that the school committee will identify, I mean, when this is working properly, and I know we're kind of in strange days, but when it's working properly, the school committee identifies strategic priorities, identifies things that we think need to happen, and then the superintendent and senior staff and principals, in consultation with teachers and all the budget managers, come up with a budget for us that says, here's how many, positions we need, and here's how many, to do the work that you want us to do. So for example, if you want to start a new social emotional learning curriculum, here's what we need in terms of teaching, in terms of materials, whatever. And so I think in this situation, we have now set forth a whole set of priorities. And I think what we need back is a budget that sort of tells us how to operationalize those strategic priorities in terms of how many classes. So again, just a very simple example of, are we going to need 9 more teachers for first grade and 9 more for second grade? And if not, how, why, and why do we need them for kindergarten? So that's not something that the school committee does. That's something that the superintendent drives with his staff. And I think in normal days, which we're not in, normally the chair and the vice chair sort of take a holistic look at, here are all the things that we've been hearing, and making sure that, I know you all meet with him weekly, or more than that, probably, we probably talk to him daily, that those priorities are getting baked into the budget, and that when trade-offs are needed, that you help sort of as a first line to be able to talk through those, but then bring it kind of to the full committee, sort of a slightly more baked, plan. So does that make sense?
Just to add to that, so one of the things last year when we knew we had a budget deficit, we asked the superintendent to look at class size, to consolidate classes where there were very small classes, or where they were under, what we've asked, the 21 to 22 K through 2, and then 3 through 8, the 25, 3 through 12, actually 25. So those sorts of things are things that we have asked. I think the one thing that's maybe a little different here is sort of looking, we should be getting some sort of report on how these classes are gonna, how it's gonna work out. Because, okay, we need to look at the numbers and see what makes sense, because hybrid classes of 7 is very small.
Mariah?
Let's put it at that.
Yeah, Mariah?
One thing that I don't necessarily see here in this staffing model is anything around, and maybe I'm just missing it because I don't recognize the label, is like help desk technicians. And one of the emails we got said something that and I think there was even a public comment, the same teacher made a public comment about help desk only being available Monday and Tuesday for part of the day. And in a world where we have 6,000 kids in a hybrid model, or close to 6,000 kids, meaning that 3,000 of them are remote at any one time, that we need to have that fully staffed for.
Well, so there are 4 help desk employees plus a supervisor that is standard for when we're in school. And then we just added, I think he's coming on Monday. We adding a person on the town side to do parent and student help desk and support online for remote remote, so that we've added a person there, and we're funding that temporarily out of the CVRF grant for the year. And I have not heard about, I did not hear about this Monday, Tuesday. I just heard recently about the internet issues, and I had a conversation with Feng Yang today, who's the IT director, and she's looking into bandwidth issues. She was actually surprised to hear it. She had not heard that complaint. So I will follow up with her also about the help desk, because I had not heard that the help desk was only available Monday and Tuesday. They should be available like they're always available, 5 days a week.
And then
could you close the loop with us on those issues?
Sure,
so
absolutely.
What happened?
Because I want to sort of tie into that if there's an actual internet infrastructure issue, then that is a capital issue, I would think, that should get.
Well, so we have, and Kevin Stokes put in a huge bandwidth we have an incredible amount of bandwidth, so I'm actually surprised to hear this. I do know that there have been some issues with Zoom and Chromebooks not being working well together, and whether that is part of, I know, but I need to find out from Scott Moore sort of what his technology issues that he's running into, as well as how the funds that he's been allocated through the 3 grants are being utilized. And I know we're still trying to finalize the internet access for any student that does not have access to internet currently. So I will follow up on all of those with the committee.
And then the last bit I wanted to mention on the staffing is the custodial, if there's enough of the custodians or we need more, because the reports, I don't know if they're accurate or not, but the reports are that it's not all getting covered. And there's been a huge amount of additional, I mean, based on what we've asked them to do, it seems like there's a lot more work to be done too.
Before we talk about technicians, can I ask a follow-up question on the technicians for internet? I've forgotten the name and that quickly. Yeah, the help desk. Is that a town function or is that a school function? I know that we have Scott Moore and the people who work with him, but then the town has a help desk. And is that what, do they simply work together? Is that one budget item that we split with the town? How does that help desk issue work?
So Scott Moore is the Director of Educational Technology, and his department, his budget essentially funds software licenses and does some of the professional development for teachers around using technology and some of the curriculum of teaching technology. And then we have the town IT department where we fund as part of our budget. It's a separate line, a separate actually program budget in our document where we fund the help desk. So we fund 4 paraprofessionals, full-time 12-month paraprofessionals, and then a supervisor. And they work under the direction of the town's IT director. And they're housed at the Denny building. And so that budget funds all of our hardware, sort of wires, I call it wires, pliers, and hardware, and how to use it in terms of turning it on, turning it off, and repairs. Whereas Scott's department really funds sort of the educational use of hardware, software, professional development around technology and use of technology in teaching and teaching skills. Does that help?
So how long have we had 4 help desk technicians? I mean, maybe we need a broader department there.
Yeah, so there's been an emerging need of adding to the help desk. It is requests are made every year and it falls off. Usually they lose out to needing new teachers and finite resources. So yes, we are getting to a point where we actually do need to add additional help desk employees and employees with certain skill sets as we've expanded and have essentially, I think, have been forced to go to a one-to-one program here in the district without really having planned that out as a one-to-one program.
And if we're having, if we are doing so much more remote learning than we were doing before, this might be the time when we need to deal with more help desk people and even possibly more people working with Scott.
So can I think I'm interrupting you, Mariah, right?
I had a question about custodians and
on IT
level of custodians.
Can I just add one thing though to what Barbara said is absolutely this shouldn't be an incremental year. We shouldn't be trying to backfill even from what we didn't do. Like this is a year to like double or triple the help desk staff. And I would also point out that if you go to the help desk webpage, there is no phone number. You have to fill in a form and someone will get back to you. And for a family like in a moment of stress who can't even get a phone number to call, or if your computer's not working, how do you fill in a form? Like you need to have a phone number to be able to call someone. So there's like serious things going on here to really address.
Guys, I wasn't planning on doing this, but at our, not tomorrow's capital meeting, but we're going to have one next week because we've been having weekly capital meetings. I think this is an issue that if I can get the IT people to come along with Scott Moore and explain to us what they're doing, what are the issues and what they need, I think it may be a better place to discuss this if people are in agreement.
Right. David, are you going to talk about IT or are you going to something else? Because Mariah wants to know about custodians.
I can.
Oh, David, you're on mute.
I was just going to say it's related to IT, but also potentially the custodians. I'll be brief. Just more broadly, I think that the discussion we're having now about what the specific needs are is very helpful to the point that Susan made earlier. If we have a list of what are the exact asks, that puts us in a better position to make sure that we have adequate funding for it so that we can implement these changes. When we only hear about these needs at a more abstract, amorphous level, there's less that we can do other than say fairly empty sounding words like, well, let's improve, let's work on that. If we know exactly what's needed, then it helps to achieve progress. So I hope that we can get those lists. I know it's difficult, but hopefully the more specific, the better.
Mariah, did you get your custodial question asked? I don't think
Nope, not yet.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I think I asked it, right? It's clear about the question.
So you asked if we had enough custodians, and for right now, I believe we do, because we only have a fraction of the students and the staff in the building.
But right now isn't the question, right? If we're aiming forwards, right?
So in aiming forwards, we will be bringing back the clean code, the cleaning vendor to help, and we've adjusted schedules for when they're going to be in to work with us, and we've adjusted custodian schedules. So we've added a little bit of additional cleaning staff time, but I believe we can do it. We were able to do this pretty consistently before the shutdown, and we're doing more cleaning than we have in the past. So with staff taking a more active role with cleaning products that we provide. So if it turns out we can't handle it, we're going to find out pretty quickly. But some of the complaints we've gotten when we've gone to inspect, they haven't been really substantiated.
Well, thank you for checking on them. What if something seems awry, they go to the custodian or they fill out?
I mean, it depends. It depends. Sometimes people do check in with the senior custodian who's usually there during the day, and they'll address it. And the custodians are working pretty hard to make sure that they're on top of everything, and they have rooms specifically to check, as well as knowing where people are and have been in the building. So, I mean, they're trying to make a good effort. They know that they're in the spotlight, as is everybody with sort of the new world that we're living in. And I believe most of them really are doing a good job.
Okay, thanks. So I guess we're going to leave this discussion, but Mary Ellen, you're going to come back to us with much more specific items, details, staffing.
Yep. Now that I know that the RLA is fully staffed, and then I can probably land a number and be ready for, as hybrid is being designed, and asking the principals, what is the staffing that, is there a change in staffing that they are anticipating, and what does that look like?
Okay, we look forward to that. Thank you. Next, we're moving on to discussion of the warrant articles. And I've been in conversation with David, and there are something like 45 articles. And I believe, David, you're going to take this on with policy to take a look at what it is.
Yes, that's right. So we have a draft policy schedule for the whole year that is awaiting confirmation. but I think it's very likely that the next policy meeting will convene on October 5th. And part of the October 5th agenda will include a look at the warrant articles, which ones are of potential relevance to the schools. And then the subcommittee will make recommendations to the full committee. And on the 8th, we can have a meeting to determine which warrant articles we want to weigh in on and have public hearings.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. It'll help us a lot. Moving on to new business. Helen, did you have something you wanted to bring up?
I did. It's just informational about the Pierce School and the Pierce School Building Committee. As many of you know, we have a owner's project manager, Left Field, the same group that's doing the Driscoll School. And they've we had a meeting of the Pierce School Building Committee on, gosh, the week is, I think it was yesterday only. And in order to look at the request for services for an architect, this is the next piece in the process with MSBA. It'll take a long time, but just to keep you guys aware, we also needed to vote to look at replacing some people who were on the committee who have either left their positions or who weren't put on in the beginning. So Robin just today, a little while ago, you may not have had a chance, put through a, let me see where it is. Robin, help me. Put through an email to all of us with the updated list. And in it, for instance, it replaces Ben Franco, who's no longer the on the Board of Selectmen, with Bernard Green, who will now be the Board of Selectmen chairperson on the School Building Committee. Also replaces Jim Marini for Ben Lummis. And Michelle Herman for
Gabe McCormick.
Gabe McCormick?
Right?
No. This is for the School Building Committee for Nicole Gitten's position. Michelle Norman. Matt Gillis is now on as a non-voting member. And we also included now as a voting member Parks and Rec, Nancy O'Connor, to be on this. What's nice is I think two or three people on the committee, either children went through Pierce or they themselves and their children went through it. So there's a very close relationship. So that's basically where things are at. There's a timeline, but I'm not going to go through that now. Of when
that information is available online, right?
Oh, absolutely. They will be posting. So Left Field, took minutes of the meeting. I think the meeting was even recorded, if I'm not mistaken, and it should be on the town website fairly shortly. What was discussed, and it was a short meeting. It was only an hour, and there will be a meeting on October 6th. Of the School Building Committee to, I'm not exactly sure all the agenda, but there will be one on October 6th for the Pierce School Building at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Thank you, Helen. Jennifer, did you have your hand up? On new business?
Yeah, I didn't think you caught that just so quick. It was a very quick hand motion. I just wanted to, just as a point of information, next Tuesday, September 29th, the Curriculum Subcommittee will be meeting from 4 to 5:30 via Zoom. We'll be talking about goals for the Curriculum Subcommittee and confirming the dates for the remainder of our monthly meetings. We are also anticipating that we will be getting some curriculum information from our K through 8 schools as well as the high school. So I've been in contact with Michelle and Meg and Hal Mason to schedule those. Once they have an opportunity to get school up and running, then we can maybe begin to have those conversations. So that's just some preliminary thoughts, but we will be meeting to talk about the subcommittee's goals next Tuesday. So members are obviously, everyone's invited, and members of the community, it is posted, so the link will be available.
Thank you. I have to say, Robin, I miss your last page where you always, when it was in print and we were in person, all the meetings and special events that were coming up. So I kind of missed that, though I'm getting better at using the town calendar, so that's good too. Barbara.
I just wondered, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I wondered if Dimitri had any questions. He's been sitting here listening to this, and it's like you've dropped in the middle of sort of a gushing waterfall. I just wondered if you had any comments or questions, or anything that we could clarify for you.
Thank you, Barbara, for asking me that. I was actually wondering whether I should wait for when we went into executive session in terms of asking the questions that I had. But I am sitting. I chose to sort of try to listen and hear, what the issues are and how we're responding to. It's been really informative for me to hear tonight. I spent the last weekend reading and catching up on all of the work you all have been doing up until now. Yeah, I think I'm sitting with a lot of the comments I've heard. I wish we could have a much earlier start of the hybrid model than October 20th. And again, because I don't know the full sort of technical pieces around what it takes in terms of getting those schedules ready and why. So I feel like, well, you have to defer to the principals if they feel they need October 20th. But again, not knowing the full details of the operational challenges of it, I was sort of sitting through with this. And then I think the last conversation that we've had around the budget and the difficulty of understanding what our needs are and being able to respond is sitting very much with me in terms of if we could get a clear picture of what the needs are, what the models. I think Susan framed it really well. What is the model and what is the staffing required for that model? Because I think unless you have that, it's difficult to understand the financial picture. And then if I had one question, which I chose not to ask, I would have asked Mary Ellen, would be if there is any financial modeling for what happens once we're done with, if we return to a normal sort of business, and what do we do with the Remote Learning Academy? And if we've sort of ramped up costs for that, is there in our financial model a plan for how you would then cut expenses? And what do we do with all the people we've then hired? So again, it might be too early for her to know this, but Mary Ellen, I don't know how far down of your financial planning you have.
So we go back to ground zero or basic. So we end up with reducing and eliminating positions, and a lot of them have been hired for only 1 year.
We do expect Remote Academy for the full year at this point, correct? That's what we're expecting.
Yeah, so they're only on a 1-year contract and everything goes back to the way we were. And that's what we do with developing the FY22 budget, is we start with the, what are we gonna offer in 22 and what does that staffing look like and where is it placed?
So Dimitri, another whole fun afternoon or morning is to attend subcommittee meetings, and we'll get you assigned to those. I'll talk to you to see what your interest is, but you are welcome to attend any of them, even if you're not a voting member of that subcommittee. And that is where a lot of deep dive discussions go on. So, depending on what your schedule is and your interest and all of that, but I highly recommend attending the different subcommittees when you can, because that's where a lot of the real conversations, the deeper conversations go. Those are public meetings, anyone can go, but it's well worth doing a deep dive in many of these areas. So we look forward to having you do that as well. There's no shortage of meetings you can attend. Okay, we're going to move on. I have a motion to meet in executive session pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for the following purposes. Purpose 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining. with the Brookline Educators Union, BEU, Unit A, Unit B, and paraprofessionals, and with AFSCME, school food service employees, if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares. And purpose 7, to review and approve executive session minutes from the following meetings: August 20th, 2020, August 31st, 2020, September 3rd, 2020, September 10th, 2020, September 14th, 2020, and September 17th, 2020. Do I have a second to the motion? Thank you, Mariah. We'll do, oh, and we will not be returning to open session when we are done. So we'll take a roll call vote. Susan?
Yes.
Thank you. Jennifer?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Helen?
Yes.
Dimitri?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So we leave this meeting. Dimitri, are you aware of this? And you go into your link for the executive session meeting. So as I say, we'll see you on the other side, we hope.